बंद कर देना अभी। hello, check, hello, check, check, hello, check, hello, check, hello, check, hello, make check, hello, hello, check,
Hello. Hello. Welcome, friends. Thank you for sparing your valuable time to come here. We at Rcme try and get programs which could be of use to the members. So, Mr. Yash needs no introduction. They have already done a program with us before. They are from the economic law practices. The objective of the program today was to have some insights on the new amendments to the GST, MSME, and any other such acts which have come up. So I'm sure that everybody would be benefited by the same. They will try and answer all the points, but if you still have any questions, you can ask them after they have completed. There will be time given for some question answers. And obviously, if there is a detailed query, you could send them a mail later. We have Mr. Yash Desai, who is a senior associate at ELP. He is going to speak on taxation, customs, etc. Mrs. Stella Joseph, she is again expert on and also on GST taxation. They are assisted by Mrs. Anushri Kothari and Ms. Hema Modi. So I would give the mic now to Yash instead of wasting more time, since we already... sorry, we forgot the national anthem to begin with. Janagana mana adinayak jaya he Bharat bhagya vidhata Punjab Sindh Gujarat Maratha Dravid Utkal Banga Vindhya Himachal Yamuna Ganga Tuchal Darad Taranga Tava Shubh Mani Jage Tava Shubh Ashish Mange Gaye Tava Jaya Gata Jai Mangal Dhayak Jaya He Bharat Bhagya Vidhata Jaya He Jaya He Jaya He Jaya 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 He. Thank you, friend.
Thank you. I can just take the. A very good evening to all the members of the Rcme. It's a pleasure once again to be between all of y'all and share the knowledge that we have on GST, customs on, and the various allied laws. So for the members, and I know this is the third year that we have been, coming to Rcme, and we have been doing these presentations. But just for one last time, we'll be giving our introduction. So we come from economic laws practice, advocates and solicitors. We are a law firm. We started our practice in the year of 2001, and it's been over 20 years that we are in this field. Economic laws practice was established in 2001 as a full-fledged law firm, but with the flagship area of practice being indirect taxation. Today, we as a law firm have members of more than 250 professionals, including lawyers, solicitors, chartered accountants, company secretaries. And we have our offices across 7 states, our head office being in Mumbai. We are located in Delhi, Pune, Ahmedabad, Chennai, Bangalore, and our latest office has been opened in the gift city, Gandhinagar, Gujarat. So with this background and not wasting any further time, I would also be very thankful, to the team that's sitting over here, especially Ms. Stella Joseph. She's a partner at ELP, being my mentor, my senior for the last 6 years, and whatever my guidance and learning has been always under her. And of course, we are supported, with Anushri Kothari and Hema Modi, who in fact, they've built the entire presentation over here. So to begin with, today's coverage, if you can just go to the next slide. So once again, आप लोग सोच रहे हो कि वापस आ गए ELP वाले, to bore us with the same GST updates, customs updates, ये क्या है, But no, don't worry. We are in fact on the, second phase of GST, as I call it. So today's coverage, okay, generally हम लोग every year क्या करते हैं? Every year there is union budget that comes in. After the union budget, there are a lot of changes under GST, income tax, customs, etc. So generally we, cover those changes, amendments, etc. But as we are aware that this, in fact, last entire financial year, there has been only an interim budget because of the elections. और जो हमारा जो main budget है, that will come in July. So essential changes, etc. will be, reflected only after the main budget. So today, what is the scope of our coverage? One of the most important things that we are going to cover is the GST audit and investigation, and I'll tell you why we are going to cover this eventually. And there are certain important 6 to 7 GST circulars and instructions that have been issued by the department in the last one financial year, which we thought would be relevant for all the members of Rcme, and hence we are covering that. Again, the next part that gets covered over here is the relief to the MSMEs. As we are aware that most of the members of the Rcme are registered as MSMEs. So what are the, substantial changes or amendments that have been brought under the MSME Act or the corresponding laws? So, essentially this is our coverage for today. And to begin with, I will be speaking essentially on GST audit and investigation. These are all going to be practical aspects. Okay, हम लोग कोई भी provision या section से आपको bore नहीं करेंगे to the best of our capabilities. And I'll be covering a few other pointers relevant over here. And after that, our colleagues Anushri and Stella Madam will be taking the next topics over here. Can you go to the next slide? So, goods and services tax key updates. So, to begin with, 7 years of GST. Wow. Started on 1st July 2017. We stand here today in April of 2024. So, with this 7 years of GST, there have been multiple things over here. Amendments in law, pro-revenue advance rulings, notices, inquiries, arrest, writ petitions, investigations, everything. I'd like to put it this way, that when a new law comes in, especially जब tax law नया आता है, the government allows you to settle down, to understand, कि क्या ये law है, how to implement it, what are the issues. In 2017-18, 18-19, 19-20, we all were struggling with queries like, अरे इस पे CGST, SGST लगाना है, IGST लगाना है. E-invoicing होगा इस पे, e-way bill generate करना है. How do we tackle these issues? So the government, kind of brought a lot of changes, a lot of amendments in the law. And now, with 5, 6, 7 years, all these issues are in a way, I wouldn't say settled, but for lack of a better word, ठीक है, ये ठहराव पे आ चुके हैं. We now come to the next phase. So this was phase 1 of GST, where the law is introduced, changes are brought in, people are struggling, eventually things are settling down. I would say now is the next phase of GST, which is phase 2. इसमें क्या होता है? The department starts assessments, starts scrutinizing. It's like government will tell you कि भैया हम तो नया टैक्स लेके आए, हमने आपको 7 साल दिए, आप अपना घर बसा लिए हो, अभी हम आएंगे. This is essentially the start of the period of audits, investigations, and a lot of notices. And I'll tell you why. This reason. 1718, 7 years back, almost 7 years back, the government has powers to issue notices for audits, investigations only up to a time period. They cannot issue notices to you forever. They can only issue it under the limitation that has been given under the Act. That limitation is eventually getting over. So if the GST department wants to tell you that, okay, XYZ entity, it's been 7 years of GST, now let me see whether the tax positions that you have adopted, आपने सही से tax भरा है कि नहीं, whether the invoicing that you have done is correctly done or not, whatever positions you have taken are correct or not, let me start doing that. Because if I don't do that now, I will miss out on the time period. That's the provision under the law. So essentially, I would say this is like the, in a way, जो पहले के 7 साल थे वो अपने सतयुग थे, थिंग्स सेटल डाउन. अभी ये थोड़ा द्वापर युग आ गया है. इसके बाद द फेज 3 दैट विल बी लिटिगेशंस, बिकॉज नो सूनर डिपार्टमेंट starts investigations, starts audits, issues will come out. According to them, we all know the department, in the right aptitude and in the right way, has a potential revenue collection, side to it. So they may, issue notices on things which are not even payable as tax, which are not even payable as GST, and you may say, no, this is the right position. So of course, you go to the court of law. You start with the adjudicating authority, you start with the lower level, you go to the tribunal, you go to the High Court, you go to the Supreme Court. That is phase 3. Just Treta Yug. What's the Kal Yug? GST gone, a new tax comes in. Name mein masti karo, aisa kuch nahi hone wala hai. So, we are at the phase 2 of GST, where essentially the audits, investigations, and everything have started. And that is why today we thought that it is extremely relevant, and more so from a practical perspective only. Because today we are assisting a lot of our clients, be it big multinational corporations or be it these smaller entities. They are facing investigations and DGGI raids. Let me tell you, DGGI is the Director General of Revenue Intelligence. They are coming to the offices, they're raiding people, they're saying you've not paid the tax correctly, they're harassing them. In such cases, it may not be a DGGI raid, it may be a normal investigations. In such cases, they directly catch hold of the senior financial officials, they catch hold of the senior tax personals, and in many cases the directors and the promoters of the company. So today's presentation essentially focuses on what are your rights. Number 1, as a director, promoter, a CFO, and a tax personnel of the company, what to say, what not to say, how much information to reveal in case that happens, आपको क्या information देनी है, नहीं देनी है. Before going over there, what we would also cover over here is, and so that it is for your practical understanding, कि department क्या कर सकता है आपके साथ. What are their rights and powers? To what extent can they ask you information? To what extent they can behave in a particular way? To what extent can they come at your place at 8 p.m. in the night when you're shutting the shop? Can they stay at your office till 2 a.m. in the night and ask you to pay a certain GST? Yes, they can. That it may not be coming out from the provision of the Act, but it's important for you to know that it is incorrect. This can be challenged. So, with this background, like I said, and this is how I wanted to put, that we're in the second phase of GST, where investigations, audits, assessments have started, where the government has allowed all the taxpayers to settle themselves. And, the following slides will follow. Number 1, if you can just go to the next slide. So very recently, this is very recent, I think 10 दिन पहले, the Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Customs, which is essentially the main board under the Ministry of Finance, okay, they have issued a GST instruction dated 30th March 2024. This instruction is for the officers of the GST department, how they should conduct investigations. Very important. And you may be thinking, अरे ये तो उनके लिए है ना, उनके लिए है, सही है. But अगर ये आपको भी मालूम होगा, and this is not only relevant for your accounts guys, this is not only relevant for your tax personals and finance, आपको भी अगर पता होगा, क्योंकि ये आपको भी डायरेक्ट फोन आ सकता है. You are the promoter and the director of the company. अगर ये आपने पोजीशन लिया है, इंपोर्ट किया है, ये पोजीशन लिया है, why is tax not paid? You are very much responsible and liable. But it's before that happens, it's very important for you to know कि वो सामने वाला क्या कर सकता है मेरे लिए. And from that perspective, you know, we just discuss this aspect first. So, you know, as discussed, the Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Customs has issued instructions to say that the field formations officers follow uniform procedure. They follow, I'm on the second line of the first para, they follow a uniform procedure in undertaking enforcement activities with or involving regular taxpayers, which incorporates aspects related to ease of doing business. Very important. Because most of the times what happens is, ye aake baith jate hai, they keep asking information documents. It hampers our day-to-day business. The entire objective is ease of business. So, you know, keeping the relevant aspects in view, these are certain guidelines. So, you know, I will not rub you guys wrongly to ये सब, you know, मैं ज़्यादा इसमें technicals में नहीं घुसूंगा, but I will just highlight the finer points which you all have to just take a note of and keep in mind कि ऐसा ऐसा है, ऐसा ऐसा हमें ध्यान रखना है, and if in future something like this happens, we can, you know, take care of it. So the most important thing is, अगर कोई भी, you know, search या investigation approve होता है, the power of that is always with the principal commissioner. Principal commissioner is like the, you know, the head or the vice president of the, you know, the GST hierarchy, you may say, in a very simple term. It's not that very simple, but I am not getting into the technicalities. Okay, so he is the person who approves your any intelligence, conducting search and completing an investigation. But this is not very simple. If it is a matter of interpretation of levy of tax for the first time, whether in central excise or GST, okay, so today when I talk about a matter of levy of tax for the first time in GST, मैं एक बहुत ही simple example देता हूँ, and this is something that can be easily understood. We all have heard about bitcoins, cryptocurrency, right? It's a new animal altogether. The question is that at present, bitcoins per se, okay, the cryptocurrency per se is not something that is within the ambit of GST. क्यों? बहुत simple reason है यार, government को मालूम ही नहीं है goods है या services है. GST में लगता क्या है? It's a goods and a services tax. Essentially, only if a particular thing, I'm not even using the word commodity or a product, क्योंकि वो generally goods हो जाता है. Only if a particular thing qualifies as goods or services, then only it is leviable to tax. Cryptocurrency, we don't know what is cryptocurrency. Is it goods? Is it services? Is it software? Or is it just a code? Pata nahi hai. Government right now, the Central Board of Direct Taxes, and in fact, the Income Tax Act has introduced a provision which says that अगर आप कोई income बनाते हो on trading of cryptocurrency, 30% tax is payable. But under GST, there is no such law right now. So I'm saying that these are newer things. These are things which are emerging, okay? So matters of interpretation seeking to levy tax for the first time, ये चीज़ ना service tax में थी, ना excise में थी, ना CST में थी, ना VAT में थी. Okay, this is for the first time that's happening. If any such thing is, you know, being taken up, you need the prior written approval from the zonal principal chief commissioner, who is the president of this entire hierarchy. That is number one. If it is a big industrial house or a major multinational company, we know the big multinational conglomerates of India. We don't need to name them. अगर वहाँ पे कोई investigation या inquiry या search करनी है, you need the prior approval. There are sensitive matters of national importance, national implications. For example, coal, allocation of coal mining, giving the rights of coal mining. This is a very sensitive subject, which is in fact being, I think if I'm not wrong, Stella can add to this, is being deliberated at the Supreme Court. You know, whether that can be taxed. ये सब बहुत national importance के issue होता है. अगर आप ऐसी कोई company पे जो minerals में deal कर रही है, if you want to do an investigation, you need a prior written approval. Might not be relevant for all of us sitting over here, but good to know, important to know. Lastly, matters which are already before GST Council. GST Council is the apex body before the Ministry of Finance, which approves a lot of decisions. जैसे कि आपको GST rate change करना है, या आपको कोई चीज़ विद इन टैक्सेशन लेके आनी है, दैट द काउंसिल डिसाइड्स. अगर वहाँ पे कोई चीज़ पेंडिंग है, यू नीड द प्रायर रिटन अप्रूवल ऑफ द चीफ कमिश्नर. सो द पॉइंट इज दैट, and there is a next slide which is a very interesting one. We started with this is the approval mechanism. So only tomorrow if someone comes and sits at your place, okay, you have to tell him that, boss, please show me your approval. Have you received an approval from the principal commissioner? That may not be in writing, sir. Let me clarify that, because the prior written approval is only an internal document between the principal chief commissioner and the officer who's doing it. But in this case, yes, there is something you can definitely question them to ask whether there is an approval received or not. On earlier occasions, ऐसे बहुत सारे circulars issue किए हैं CBIC ने, which are in relation to search operations, scrutiny of GST returns, summons हो गया. So, but this is the very recent one, 30th March. And the reason we are highlighting and putting so much of emphasis over here is because, like I said, we are in the phase 2 of GST. The department has started investigations, and this is the appropriate time for them to issue such a instruction for their officers. That's how it is. Coming to the next slide, a very interesting one. हमने इसको specifically do's और don'ts में डाले हुए हैं. So basically ये जो instruction है GST का, it lays down a particular parameters that my officers have to do this, my officers cannot do this. Very important for us to know. It is like knowing your own rights. It's like आपको पता होना चाहिए कि पुलिस की कितने rights है. What can he do? Can he touch me? Can he not touch me? Very simple. Do's. For an investigation of a listed company, PSU, government department, or any authority established by law, official letters should be sent instead of summons. Okay, this is the investigation that we do. The letter should disclose specific nature of inquiry being undertaken. It cannot be vague. It cannot be vague saying that, हमको लग रहा है कि आपके returns में कुछ mistake and we are starting an investigation. It cannot be vague. My request is, please take a note of all these points, because in the future, if something like this happens, you need to be aware. If you receive a letter saying that we are initiating an inquiry, that letter should have the specific reasons and the basis for initiating such an inquiry. The content of summons, the third bullet point on the left hand side, should be with the prior recent approval of the officer not below deputy and assistant commissioner level. वो जो आपका letter होगा, उसमें there would be a signature. All the letters and all the notices that you receive are always e-signed. Usme, the designation will be written. So you need to be careful about this. Probably, not all the senior personals over here might be relevant, but आपके जितने भी accounts, tax, finance वाले persons है office में, they can take a note of this. And very important, before summoning any information or documents from a regular taxpayer, I'll read that again. Before summoning any information or documents from a regular taxpayer, the relevancy and propriety of what is being sought must be recorded, ensuring that it is holistic and result of preparation, and also so as to not have repeated issue of summons or seeking peaceful informations. A lot of times these officers पहले पूछते कि आपके trial balance दे दो, फिर पूछते आपके invoices दे दो, फिर पूछते आपके bill of entry दे दो. This is not the way of doing it. ये specific instruction दिया हुआ है यहाँ पे to these officers, and you all have the power to challenge this. What are the don'ts? ये आपको मतलब these are the instructions from the CBIC to the officers saying कि आपको ये भैया करना ही नहीं है. So please be very particular with what you do. It says that the letter which comes to you must not mention vague or general expressions like this is a GST inquiry, or this is evasion of GST, or GST evasion. What GST evasion? What inquiry? Please tell us. Please specify. Today, if I am importing a grade of rubber chemical, okay, you are saying कि customs duty इस पे BCD लगना चाहिए था 5%. मैंने लगाया ही नहीं है. Okay, और मैं IGST का भी exemption ले रहा हूँ. He's saying this is GST invasion. We faced a similar query with one of our recent clients. What is the basis of it? आप बोलोगे भैया exemption notification खोलो 50 of 2017. उसमें देखो मेरा customs tariff heading है whatever. Say, I'm not aware of the custom tariff headings for rubber products, but for one of our shipping clients, it's under chapter 89. 89 में यहाँ पे मुझे BCD का भी exemption है, IGST का भी है, I'm claiming properly. That's it. Your matter is done. we have faced such issues that without their application of mind, without understanding that the taxpayer, what is he doing? What is the tax position that he's following? They're issuing notices. So it's a clear instruction that please don't make it vague or general. Second point, the summons in conduct of investigations must not convey request outside the scope. There's a particular scope that these guys have to follow. Okay, kal jaake they cannot directly, seek something that is not within their scope or, ask. For example, your personal information. Okay. Today, you are acting as a director or proprietor or as a partner of a particular company. You are running the business. You are the legal representative, in a way, implied legal representative of that company. They cannot just ask your personal documents. Information available digitally or online, which is already there on your GST portal, on your ICE gate, etc., that cannot be asked. Ye already hai na usme, so why are you asking us again? If a taxpayer has utilized input tax credit towards payment of GST on its outward supply, it's not acceptable to seek via summons letter except aspects such as please clarify whether ITC. So again, it has to be very specific. It cannot be general. So, these are certain pointers which the board has instructed their officers to do. Very recent. It's a 30th March ka instruction. And it's a very good to know from everyone's perspective, because today the department is going haywire. They are issuing notices, and we'll come to that, why they are doing that in a haywire manner, because wo limitation khatam ho raha hai, and I'll explain that in greater detail. So it's good to know ki, this is what your powers and rights are. I'll separately share this notification and circular with all the members of the Rcme. It's a good to have, good to know document. Just to complete this circular explanation, the points are that generally an investigation, if it has been started, should be completed, must be completed in not more than 1 year. So that is the time period that is given. And the report should basically give a brief of the, issues and the period involved. Lastly, like I said, इसमें से अगर कुछ follow नहीं होता है, so those grievances in relation to any ongoing litigation, you can address directly to the additional or the joint commissioner who is in charge of the investigation. In case the reasonable grievances persist, okay, and if he's not following any of these parameters that have been said, the commissioner may consider meeting by appointment with the taxpayer. So you even have that right. You have the right to go and meet the relevant principal commissioner in case these grievances are not resolved by giving them in writing. So we thought that this is an important instruction that could be discussed from the perspective of the current investigations, and like I said, ye Dwapar Yug hai, so this is the phase 2 of GST, what we need to be careful of. We go to the next point. Now, these are very interesting aspects on GST audit and investigation, and these are all practical pointers. No sections, no provisions, nothing. Again, in detail, we've tried to explain over here that which are the ways and what are the reasons why the GST department, initiates such proceedings, and what are your rights, what are your duties as well to be followed in such cases, and very relevant in the present era. So, these are the possible reasons for the tax disputes. If you see, generally, I didn't want to say in such a big forum, but revenue bias approach driven by achievement of target, one of the biggest reasons. We see these reasons not only in GST but other legislations as well. Risk averse attitude of tax official for fear of vigilance. That means that the senior officers may question them that, "Arey bhaiya, aap kya kar rahe ho? There are so many taxpayers. What is it? You think all of them are good? All of them are, legit? All of them are sincerely paying tax? Pick them up." Inclination to file appeal against every pro-taxpayer decision. That means that today, if the High Court or the Supreme Court has given a legit decision that this is something that is not taxable, they go and challenge it in the Supreme Court. If the tribunal has given a positive decision, they go and challenge it in the High Court. That's the attitude. No accountability for poor decision. Decision le lete, they do anything. In our cases, we have faced such issues jahan pe, and this was, I think, in the Orissa High Court, where we, for one of our clients, it was a shipping company, we had hired a senior counsel who argued the matter for 3 consecutive days. He argued the entire matter for 3 consecutive days. Department counsel. He was representing the customs department. He finishes his argument. He talks for 5 minutes. And the judge is saying, "Okay, go ahead." He says, "No, my lords, I'm done." So, "You're done?" "Yes, my lords, I'm done." So you say, look at the counsel, he argued for 3 days. You're done in 5 minutes. That's it. These things are, very taken in a very casual way. But इसमें होता क्या है? The assessee bears the brunt of it, to pay the counsel fees. इतना लंबा कोर्ट में मैटर चला, हाई कोर्ट का डिसीजन आया, ये ऐसा डिसीजन आया, सुप्रीम कोर्ट में वापस अपील हो जाता है काफ़ी बार. Lack of business knowledge, that's always the problem. They don't understand the business. Reluctance of board in clarifying technical issues timely. काफ़ी बार जो बोर्ड होता है CBIC, जैसे कि अभी उन्होंने इंस्ट्रक्शन इशू किया है, they don't, many a times, in fact, let me be honest, that the GST department and the government has done very well. वो लोग ने time and again, they have issued a lot of clarifications and notifications on a lot of complex and grey area matters, जहाँ पे हमको भी नहीं पता चलता है कि इस पर टैक्स लगेगा कि नहीं लगेगा, GST लगेगा कि नहीं लगेगा. So generally there is a reluctance, but otherwise, they are very slow in issuing such clarifications. Information sharing amongst regulators and industry-wide issues. So generally, these are the possible reasons for, all sort of tax disputes. And because of this, the next slide we come to, things like audit assessments, summons, and investigations happen. So this slide is very, very practical. This is more from the perspective कि if you get a summons notice, which I'm sure आप में से कई taxpayers को मिला होगा summons, it might be for GST, it might be for customs में इतना नहीं होता, but GST में ज़्यादा है. Or any before investigation summons होते, they either call you or they call certain information or documents, either of them. This is a power given under section 70 of the CGST Act, sorry. But the point is who to attend the summons. What are you supposed to say during the summons? And what are the things to avoid? Very basic. And I'll share a very recent example for one of our client, okay? And I'll come to this. So this client is a Alcobev company. It manufactures alcoholic beverages. This is not even a month back. There was a DGGI raid, okay? And you won't believe, आप guess करो कि कितने tax amount पे ये issue हुआ होगा. For what tax amount? It's an Alcobev company, manufactures a very known brand, okay? 100 crores, 200 crores, 15 crores, 15 crore के लिए वहाँ पे आके बैठ गए वो लोग. Continuously for 3 to 4 weeks, they're harassing the client. वो लोग ने client को इतना torture किया. मतलब what these guys usually do is, they pick up guys of CFO level के जो under होते हैं ना, उनको pick up करते हैं. During the summons, they yell at them. They talk in a higher pitch. The opposite person gets nervous. He doesn't know what to say. The problem is कि ये टाइम पे अगर आपने कुछ गलत बोल भी दिया तो वो रिकॉर्ड हो जाता है स्टेटमेंट. ओके, एंड देन दैट्स इट. वो स्टेटमेंट अगर आपने कुछ गलत बोल दिया, देन your possibility of retracting them is also a challenge. You have to go to the magistrate and there are various nuances towards it. So this client of ours, उसका बंदा बैठा है DGGI summons. He's giving up all the information left, right, center, some information which is grossly inappropriate and incorrect, and they are stuck in that situation. So out of that experience of ours, we have built this slide, in fact, to say that who should first of all attend the summons. Summons आ गया मतलब किसी को भी मत भेजो. What should he say? And what are the things that should be definitely avoided? Okay. So the first is, can an advocate or a consultant attend? I can't give you a very clear answer, but essentially no, because the summons, sometimes the notice clearly says that this can be attended by a representative or a legal consultant, in which case you can. But if it does not, then in those cases, ideally the assessee or the taxpayer should attend the summons. The number of attendees, ideally 1 or 2, not more than that. मतलब 5-6 जन को लेके तो हम जा नहीं सकते. What to say? First of all, the first bullet point, statement will be on oath. Full honest and disclosure basis. It's not that if someone has called you, you go and say, "Arey sir, our company was incorporated in 98. पता चला it was incorporated in 2004." That is recorded. आप बोल दो कि अरे गलती हो गई. नहीं boss, you've said it's 98. You are misleading. This is what happens. This we faced practically. So only if you know a particular thing, please say that. If you don't, say that I will come and I'll check that and come back. Cooperative approach, respectful demeanor, very important. These guys will provoke you to get irritated and talk badly. क्योंकि वो लोग, these guys are DGGI raid guys. चिल्लाएंगे आप पे. They tell you things like, अरे, you don't know when the company is incorporated, you don't know what's your turnover. Last return में कितना, you don't know things like that. The opposite person, sometimes if he's a calm guy, he takes it. If he's not, वो भी भड़क गया तो seek time to reply if you're unaware, like I said. Try to sense the direction, very important. See, we are not saying that all the officers who initiate such investigations, summons, etc., have single-minded approach of garnering revenue. नहीं, सबका ऐसा नहीं होता है. They genuinely want to understand the issue. Okay, there are certain industries, especially service industries, which operate in a very complicated fashion. Okay, one example that I can give you, and again this is for one of our clients, and I'm sharing examples so that we can relate to the discussions that we are having. One of our clients is into logistics. Okay, he is essentially a general sales and a service agent for all the international airlines in India. So today he has the monopoly, मतलब एतिहाद हो गया, एमिरेट्स हो गया, लुफ्तांजा हो गया, कॉन्टास हो गया, सबका वो एजेंट है इंडिया में. किस चीज़ के लिए? धंधा लाने के लिए. He is essentially getting these airlines business in India of cargo and passenger. Now the point is that today he is a middleman. Okay, he takes the space on the aircraft, वहाँ पे वो cargo sell करता है, and that he further on sells to a freight forwarder. Okay, the point is that it's सुनने में समझने में easy लगता है, but when you open the documentation, it's very complicated because फॉर ट्रांसपोर्टेशन ऑफ कार्गो वो होगा तो एयरलाइन के एयरक्राफ्ट में, तो जो एयरवे बिल इश्यू होगा वो एयरलाइन के नाम पे होगा, उसमें नाम होगा कंसाइनर का, उसमें नाम होगा कंसाइनी का, उसमें नाम होगा एजेंट का. तो ये जो जनरल सेल्स एंड सर्विस एजेंट है उसका नाम कहाँ पर है एयरवे बिल में? दिस इज़ अ वेरी नीश इंडस्ट्री स्पेसिफिक इशू. डिपार्टमेंट गाइज डोंट अंडरस्टैंड दिस. सो what ultimately I'm trying to tell you is that sometimes you have to sense the direction of the officer on what is he trying to do. Is he genuinely trying to understand the business, or his approach is only to garner revenue by trying to make you inculcate things and say things which are incorrect? Very important things to avoid. Guesswork to karo hi mat. If you don't know something, seek time to reply if you are unaware. Guesswork is a complete no. Please don't do it at all. Commit to pay tax demand without SCN. Please understand one thing which we'll eventually cover in a presentation. जब आपका समन्स हो गया, समन्स के बाद वो लोग इन्वेस्टिगेशन करते हैं, इन्वेस्टिगेशन खत्म हो गया, उसके बाद आपको आएगा शो कॉज नोटिस. दिस इज द प्रोविजन ऑफ लॉ. इसके पहले आपको शो कॉज नोटिस आ ही नहीं सकता है. सो द पॉइंट दैट वी आर ट्राइंग टू मेक ओवर हियर इज जब तक आपको शो कॉज नोटिस नहीं आया है, don't commit them to pay any tax, because if you do that, that is a statement that they take in recording, and then that's it. So, I've been trying to highlight, investigating authorities are known to adopt innovative, high-pitched interpretations, which are very, very, which are very, very illogical. They are outlandish, is what few of our, anyway. But, and one more example that if I may just give over there, what I mean by high-pitched and innovative interpretations. Okay, this is very, very, very interesting, and so that just all of us understands what we are trying to say over here. We all are aware, artificial intelligence, ChatGPT. I believe सुना तो होगा सबने, and artificial intelligence, of course. So ChatGPT, what does it do? ChatGPT is known as something as generative AI. वो क्या करता है, आप उनको कोई क्वेश्चन पूछो वो आपको फटाफट जवाब दे देता है. इट्स आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस. सो वन थॉट प्रोसेस दैट केम वाज जस्ट गोइंग ऑन एंड इन डिस्कशंस कि आज कोई चीज़ पे अगर टैक्स लगती है, ओके, फॉर समथिंग टू बी टैक्स्ड देयर हैज़ टू बी अ वैल्यू. With 100 rupees, 200 rupees, 1000 rupees, there has to be a value to it. So here a very interesting question came, that can the output that is generated by ChatGPT and AI be taxed over and over again because it's giving you new results? मतलब क्या हुआ इसका कि अगर आपने ChatGPT को एक सवाल पूछा है, ओके, कि आज मुझे बताओ कि हाउ मच क्वांटिटी ऑफ कार्गो गेट्स इंपोर्टेड इनटू इंडिया ऑफ अ पर्टिकुलर ग्रेड ऑफ रबर, वो आपको जवाब दे देता है. फिर आपको पूछते हो कि अच्छा मुझे बताओ इसमें से ये स्पेशलिटी ग्रेड का कितना मिलता है, वो भी आपको जवाब देता है. फिर आपको उसे पूछते हो कि इस पर टैक्स कितना लगेगा, इट आंसर्स यू. आप बोलते हो इम्पोर्ट ड्यूटी में ड्यूटी बचाने का कोई स्ट्रक्चर है, वो भी जवाब दे देते हैं. तो भाई हम तो हो गए जॉबलेस. द पॉइंट इज that can someone say that for each answer that it's giving you, a separate value has to be attached to that. आपने पहले पूछा कितना क्वांटिटी इंपोर्ट होता है, फाइन. कौन से ग्रेड का इंपोर्ट होता है, ओके, दैट्स अगेन अ डीपर क्वेश्चन. थर्ड आप पूछ रहे हो कि इस पर कितना टैक्स लग रहा है, ओके. फोर्थ बोलते हैं अच्छा मेरे को स्ट्रक्चर करके दे. तो ही इज एडिंग वैल्यू, राइट. कैन समवन से कि पहले आपने जो क्वेश्चन पूछा वो 100 रुपये का था, बट जो लास्ट में पूछा उसका वैल्यू था 10,000. तो 100 रुपये भी 18% GST भरो, 10,000 रुपये भी भरो, ऐसा कुछ हो सकता है. दैट्स द काइंड ऑफ इंटरप्रिटेशन डिपार्टमेंट, इट्स पॉसिबल. So, what we are trying to highlight is that, there are a lot of new things coming in the market. And the department is capable of doing such things. So ultimately, if we follow these guidelines, that's the best thing to do. Go to next slide. This is generally the events in the investigation. क्या होता है, search होता है, seizure होता है. Eventually, I would not like to exactly, put them in this sequence, but essentially, search, seizure, search होता है, उसके बाद seizure करते हैं, they take certain document of yours, summons होता है, they call you, financial thrust, they ask you to make the payment, and lastly arrest. Arrest is a possibility. I'm not scaring anyone over here, but one of our clients was almost arrest. In that anticipation, we got him an anticipatory bail from the Delhi High Court. And again, it's for the same Alcobev entity that I mentioned over here. सिर्फ 15 करोड़ की डिमांड के लिए. We can go to the next slide. So, these are again certain practical pointers how to purposefully participate in an investigation. Full and honest disclosure imperative. Respectful, firm, credible demeanor with investigation officers. Seek time if the person whose statement is being recorded is unaware of any issues. Immediate retraction of any incorrect or inconsistent statement. This is very important. Tomorrow, what may happen is, and again, we are sharing this from our practical experience, that अगर कोई चीज़ पे टैक्स नहीं भी लग रही है, अगर आपके बंदे ने बोल दिया कि येस वी हैव टेकन द पोजीशन और हमने जानबूझकर इस पे टैक्स नहीं भरा है, ऐसा हमारे साथ हुआ है, बिकॉज वो प्रेशर में होता है. दीज आर कॉल्ड सिचुएशंस अंडर ड्यूरेस. These are called situations where coercive behavior is kind of, used by the department officers to extract information from you. So in those situations, you may just say something incorrect. Retract that statement. Retraction मतलब वो statement को वापस लेना. But वो इतना easy नहीं होता है क्योंकि वो legal statement हो गया है. So you have to go to the court. Court में you have to prove कि बॉस ये 2 बजे तक बैठा था यहाँ पे. He had a gun on my head. Not literally, but yes. He asked me to give this statement. The courts allow such allow the retractment of such statements. It can be done. Guard against statements to the effect that the head office knows. This is something that a defense can be taken. अगर आपका कोई junior level का बंदा गया है, doesn't know, he can say that the HO knows we're not aware of this position. So this is, yeah. Again, these are again certain, practical pointers. One of the important pointers over here is that the lawyer can accompany but cannot intervene or influence. Because in most of these cases, what happens is कि आप directly अपने CA को phone लगाओगे या अपने lawyer को phone लगाओगे. You'll tell him that, boss, I've got an investigation. You tell me, what needs to be done. Yeah, you come with me because I'm not aware. So definitely they can accompany you, but they cannot intervene or influence any of the decisions or the things that you are saying क्योंकि officer आपके सामने ही होगा. Like I said, if you can just go back, if threat of arrest is perceived, this point, explore the option to obtain anticipatory bail. Okay, payment of taxes to be made after proper verification and in consultation with the legal advisor or your chartered accountant, whoever it is. And the most important, and I think ये तो सब लोग ही note करो, अगर आप कोई payment कर भी रहे हो, during any such summons or investigation, always, and if you are not sure that this is payable, which will 100% be the case, that you're not sure कि आप ये पेमेंट कर रहे हो कि सही है कि नहीं, ये होना चाहिए कि नहीं, do it under protest. एक लेटर डालो, say that we are making this payment but we are doing it under protest. It means that tomorrow I have the ability to go to the department and say कि भैया देखो, at that time मुझे कुछ सूझ नहीं रहा था, I am unsure if this tax was payable or not, and hence I have paid it under protest. This leaves you with the opportunity to claim the refund of the tax that you have paid. Very critical. And now we're just coming to the the last slide on the audit and investigation, and after that I'll be happy to take any questions if there are any. But these are certain defenses. मतलब हम क्या कर सकते हैं from a very legal perspective. मतलब right to remain silent. It's a very interesting issue. आपको कोई क्वेश्चन कर रहा है बैक टू बैक, यू नॉट आंसरिंग, ही इज आस्किंग यू 1000 थिंग्स, ही इज आस्किंग यू आपका प्रमोटर कौन है, क्या है, ये है, वो है, stay silent. But the question is this legally doable? Is this legally correct? The answer is yes, it is. So section 161 of the Code of Civil Procedure provides that no person is bound to answer any question which exposes him to a criminal charge. Right to silence is not an offense and cannot be said to be an obstruction to a proceeding. Because many a times if you're not answering, he may say, अरे बॉस तुम जवाब मुंह ही नहीं खोल रहे हो, मौन व्रत लेके बैठे हो क्या? You're obstructing my proceedings. How do I proceed with that? That's my right. There is a judgment of the Andhra Pradesh High Court in NSR Krishna Prasad versus Director of Enforcement, ED. ये तो ED के केस में. Interesting. The second is right to retract statement, like I spoke before. The taxpayer has the right to retract the statement, वापस लेना वो statement, which was made under pressure or coercion. Such retraction of statement should be made as soon as possible by filing a complaint to the higher officials by way of duly sworn affidavit. Affidavit के बगैर ये कोई नहीं मानेगा. This is also supported by certain judicial precedents. And lastly, right to cross-examine. The taxpayer also has the right to cross-examine the third person who has made any adverse statement. So what may happen is that आपका investigation चल रहा है, आपके competitor ने आपका tip दे दी हो. That is essentially one of the reasons why an investigation may be started. You have the right to question him and cross-examination him. If cross-examination is not allowed, it amounts to a violation of the principle of natural justice. Very important pointers, शायद अभी relevant नहीं होंगे, but you know, if these things, you know, may happen in the future, very important to note. And a very interesting point, again a very practical one, I'm just reading the Supreme Court of India, in this specific judgment of Paramveer Singh Saini versus Baljit Singh, you know, they've said that has directed the government to install CCTV cameras and recording equipment, more specifically in the office of the Department of Revenue Agency or any other agency who can carry out interrogation and has the power to arrest. They've said that, boss, please install CCTVs. We need to understand what are you doing with the SSC and the taxpayer. Please understand these are civil matters. Today, in the law, there are two things. One is civil, one is criminal. टैक्स इशू हो गए, रेवेन्यू कलेक्शन हो गया, IRS जो हम बोलते हैं, इंडियन रेवेन्यू सर्विसेज एक्सेट्रा एक्सेट्रा, दीज आर सिविल मैटर्स, दीज आर नॉट क्रिमिनल चार्जेस. ओके, सो you need to be very careful. जब भी ये investigations, audits, etc. चलते हैं, these are civil matters. The assessees, the taxpayers need to be treated in a good demeanor, in a good way. So based on the above, the taxpayer can insist that the inquiry should be recorded by the audio video equipment. You can request that, you have the power. And in case the officer does not agree for this, then the taxpayer can also approach the High Court. So, you know, with this, I end the session on audit and investigations. Happy to take any questions. I'll take a pause here. If not, yes, please, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah. My next slide will talk about that. My immediately next slide talks about that. Yes, sir.
So you said that, you know, I mean, you have to make a statement under protest.
Sure.
Practically speaking, do they really allow you to?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. They do allow. Yes. In fact, not only in cases of audits, investigations, summons, search, etc., but generally also when, for example, you know, I've imported a particular goods, okay, I believe that basic customs duty is exempted for me under a particular entry of the customs notification. But the problem is that I am unsure of the classification. क्योंकि एक पर्टिकुलर चैप्टर में BCD एग्जेम्प्ट है, एक पर्टिकुलर चैप्टर में एग्जेम्प्ट नहीं है. मेरे हिसाब से वो कैटेगरी में गिरता है जहाँ पे एग्जेम्प्ट नहीं है, बट स्टिल आई पे द ड्यूटी बट आई पेड अंडर प्रोटेस्ट, एंड देन आफ्टर दैट आई लिटिगेट. आई टेल द डिपार्टमेंट आई वांट अ रिफंड ऑफ दिस, क्योंकि अभी मैंने जो ड्यूटी भरा है वो मैंने अंडर प्रोटेस्ट भरा हुआ है.
So duty payment when searches is happened during that time, do the officer really allow you to enter a request?
Yes, sir, they do.
I will continue this question. In criminal or civil matter? What is that?
This is a civil matter, sir.
Civil matter.
Absolutely.
Only civil.
Yes.
You can protest.
Yes.
My next question is about fraudulent ITC.
Sure.
So we have to give example there, party A, party B.
Okay.
B
Okay.
Say I'm party B.
Okay.
I'm buying from A,
Okay.
and I've taken ITC on that.
Okay.
Now supplier A has done something wrong.
Okay.
So and I'm taking ITC. So will it be considered as an fraudulent ITC?
Sure. No, in fact, Anushri and Stella have done a lot of research on this aspect. But generally speaking, there are a lot of high court decisions, and I'll allow Stella to speak on this.
You would then, there are a lot of judgments of the Supreme Court, MDS switchgear, etc., which basically help you to say that if suppose the tax department comes to you as the recipient and question that your credit is disputed because we think that this supply is fraudulent, you can push back and rely on those judgments to say that if you had an issue with the supply, please go to the supplier and go after him and raise a demand on him rather than deny the credit in my end. So this is an issue which has been settled by the Supreme Court, and we've also won cases in the CESTAT on this issue. So under GST, I mean, the matter has not traveled up to, because there is no tribunal as such, but the Supreme Court judgments still hold good, and you can always rely on them to say that the department cannot question a credit in the hand of the recipient before first going after the supplier. So you would have, defenses to make in that case.
This leads to my second question. Invoice may or may be genuine, transaction may be genuine.
Yeah.
But what if there is something wrong in terms of HSN code?
Okay.
If there is something in the HSN code, so buyer A is bought under HSN code ABC, and he is sold me under HSN code XYZ,
Right.
and I claim ITC.
Right.
So, what is the status on fraudulent ITC in such cases?
So-
I'm not aware whether the person has done such thing.
Okay. So is the tax rate changing because of HSN?
No, tax rate will be same.
So then it is just a issue of the invoice declaring the wrong HSN. Ultimately, the tax implication remains the same, right? Because he must have charged, let's say, GST of 18%, and you have taken credit of GST of 18%, while the HSN is cited as wrong. Even if you would have cited the right HSN, the tax would have remained the same. So therefore, from your perspective, as a recipient, your credit cannot be denied, because ultimately the transaction is liable for an 18% only, and you have rightly taken the credit of 18%. It's just a procedural error, and there are certain circulars of CBIC which allows the supplier to amend certain details. I'll just have to check if HSN is one of them or not, but it's just a procedural lapse in that case, because the tax rate in your case is not changing. So your credit cannot be denied on that basis. See, for taking credit, you have to satisfy conditions of section 16(2). What are they? You are in receipt of a tax invoice. Tax has been paid to the government. Return has been filed. You have filed the return. So that condition is satisfied. And fourth,
This you are saying me as a buyer.
as a buyer. And fourth is that you have received the goods or services. As long as these four conditions are satisfied, your credit cannot be denied on possible procedure infraction ke the HSN is wrong, etc. These are the substantial conditions for credit to be availed. So as long as you can prove this, then you will be able to defend your case.
So when I say we have received goods, is e-way bill allowed enough information, or it has to be accompanied by LR or?
Yes. So there is a judgment of the Supreme Court, Ecom Gill, which is on this in the context of VAT, but they have kind of looked at this issue that how do I, because under GST also, under section 161, if I'm not mistaken, the burden of proving that credit is rightly taken lies on you. Okay. In the context of goods, the judgment of Ecom kind of goes into what are the documents that you should produce to prove that you actually received the goods. So one of them is LR, then your e-way bill. So there's like a multiple of things. So you'll have to kind of substantiate your claim by those documentary evidence also. So because of that section which says the burden is on me, department can ask you to provide all those details.
Is it like the information which you say that is very important and useful as well?
Yes.
such list as to what are the documents
Sure.
that will be made available?
Sure. So, disclaimer here: it's not written in law. Therefore, what we can rely on is what the Supreme Court has laid down. So we will share that judgment with you and possibly the parameters of the documents, etc. So I think that is good enough defense. You can always say that, look, I'm following what Supreme Court has asked. So, that is good enough then for me to follow.
I have a last and important question about it. Say, so when we say maintenance of document in case of search, seizure or any such incidents, or maybe someone, for how many years documents are required to be maintained?
72 months.
7 years.
72 months.
72.
6 years.
Okay. And also, is it necessary that we should have a hard copy of?
No, it can be maintained in electronic as well.
Both hard copy as well as EV.
You can maintain it only in EV, that is also fine. Electronic.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, so moving on to the next one, and again, this is also very important. Bol raha hu, everything is important. Okay, sorry. So okay, कोई बात नहीं. Audit investigation खत्म होने के बाद, after the interval, this is the next part of the movie. Okay, so पहले आपको समन्स आया, समन्स हो गया, इन्वेस्टिगेशन चालू हुई, इन्वेस्टिगेशन खत्म हो गया. Now what? The officers are finally going out of your house. Your office, of course. Then they say, okay, ठीक है, हमने इन्वेस्टिगेशन किया, इन्वेस्टिगेशन में we come to know कि बस 1, 2, 3 and 4 यहाँ पे है गफला. This is something that is the taxpayer has done a mistake. I need to do a recovery of this. How do I do this? Very simple. Immediately after investigation, they need to issue a show cause notice, which is known as SCN. But now the entire point of me saying कि हम द्वापर युग में है, ये phase 2 है GST का, is why? Because like we see, 17-18 is when GST was introduced. And like I said, that there is a time period. Okay, there is a time period only till when a show cause notice can be issued for a particular financial year. And that is what we have tabulated over here. Financial year 17-18, okay. Issuance of show cause notice, 30th September was the last day. Order आपका आना चाहिए 31st December. Order मतलब notice issue किया है उन्होंने. They have determined what is your tax liability and they come out with their report card, which is ultimately the order. We have given a bifurcation over here, Section 73 and Section 74. Let me give a background to it. Section 73 is general cases. Assuming that the taxpayer has done everything correct without misrepresentation, without a misfeasance, without an intention of fraud. उसमें जितनी भी show cause notices issue होगी, they get issued under Section 73 of the CGST Act. But if the department thinks that ये जो taxpayer है, इसने जानबूझकर गलत किया है, either he has issued a fraud invoice, he has issued an invoice without supply of service or goods, he has done something wrong. Okay, the department has the power to issue the notice under 74, but what is the difference? The difference is of the time period. For a particular financial year, okay, in terms of Section 73, a particular order for a show cause notice can be issued within 3 years from the date of the return that you have to file, okay, that you have filed, and the notice for that order has to be 3 months prior to the order. मतलब effectively आपने जो आपका last GST return वो financial year के लिए file किया है, वहाँ से 2 years and 9 months is the time period for the department for you to issue a show cause notice. Now, since it was a financial year 17-18, the law was settling, everyone was settling, the government went on increasing the time period for the department कि भैया आप थोड़ा take some breather. Okay? So, ideally for 17-18, 2 years and 9 months should get over in September of 2020 only. But then COVID came, this came, that came, laws were settling down. So, wide issue of notifications, they increase the time period. So, for 17-18, what I'm essentially trying to say is, अगर आपका audit नहीं हुआ है, तो अभी वो chances होने के बहुत कम है, क्योंकि उसके लिए कोई show cause notice, audit नहीं, कोई show cause notice issue नहीं हो सकता. My bad. For 18-19, the last date अगर आपको कोई शो कॉज नोट फॉर फाइनेंशियल ईयर 18-19, अगर आपको कोई शो कॉज नोटिस आ सकती थी फॉर ट्रांजैक्शंस एंटर्ड इनटू दैट फाइनेंशियल ईयर वाज ओनली 31st January 2024, सो बाय बाय, नो नोटिसेस मोर फॉर 18-19. उसका ऑर्डर 30th April तक अगर आपका कुछ चल रहा है तो 30 April तक, विच इज़ आई थिंक 20 days में ऑर्डर आना चाहिए. एंड लास्टली फॉर 1920, फाइनेंशियल ईयर 1920, अगर कोई आपको नोटिस आएगी तो उसका लास्ट डेट है 31st May. तो अगर आपको कोई नोटिस आती है फॉर 1920, डोंट बी सरप्राइज्ड ऑन 31st May itself. Section 74, the powers are much wider. If you see, the notice can be issued to you for financial year 17-18 till the August of this financial year. I mean August of 2024. The reason is 5 years. जैसे मैंने बोला, यहाँ पे 3 साल है, वहाँ पे 5 साल है. So, but 74 is not an easy thing to be done. Please understand. Okay. 73 is normal. 74 में the department has to prove कि आपने fraud किया है, आपने data, information suppress किया है. You have misrepresented to the government. If they are able to prove this, they can issue a notice under Section 74, which is then you have to litigate that if you are not at fault. This is called as limitation. So, now, in this context, I'm sure आपको ये समझ में आ रहा होगा कि 17-18 में GST आ गया था, and as per the time periods that are given under the law, these, where we are standing today is essentially, the period where all these things will be going on, क्योंकि यहाँ से limitation खत्म हो रहा है. 17-18, 18-19 के लिए तो खत्म हो गया. The department can't even open your books. They can't essentially issue a show cause notice if an issue is found. So the point is that these things will start happening now. You may say that this will happen in the future. This will happen in the future, but these are the initial years of GST, and that is where majority of the issues are, because the tax positions are incorrect, might be incorrect. The positions that are taken, the records that are maintained are. So this is very important for everyone to note. What are the time periods and what are the dates, etc. There is a very interesting aspect that today, in fact, Anushri brought up with her experience for one of our clients, and it's a very interesting angle. We were debating in the car actually. गाड़ी में हम लोग discuss कर रहे थे. So Anushri tells me that mostly आपको show cause notices किसके लिए आते हैं? Very petty issues like आपने input tax credit ज़्यादा ले लिया वर्सेस सामने वाले ने जो दिखाया था उससे. आपने लिया 100 रुपया, बट सामने वाले ने दिखाया 50 रुपया. आपने 50 एक्सेस ले लिया, इसके लिए शो कॉज नोटिस आ गया. The point that we are making over here is that 74 allows you only to issue a notice in case of a suppression. मतलब जानबूझ के आपने अगर कुछ गलत डिक्लेयर किया है तो. बट जो लॉ का हमारा रीडिंग है, द रीडिंग इज लाइक दिस, दैट फॉर इश्यूज फॉर 2A 3B मिसमैच, मतलब आपने 50 लिया है, सामने वाले ने 25 ही रिपोर्ट किया है, द डिपार्टमेंट कैन नॉट इश्यू अ नोटिस टू यू अंडर सेक्शन 74. वाई? बिकॉज दिस इज नॉट अ सप्रेशन. What is a suppression? हमने extract किया है. Suppression is defined as non-declaration of facts or information which a taxable person is required to declare in the return, statement, report or any other document furnished under GST law, or failure to furnish any information on being asked for in writing by the proper officer. So what we are trying to say is, when I declare a particular credit that I take in my returns, today I understand कि मैंने for my output of certain goods I have procured certain goods जिस पे मैंने 100 रुपया GST भरा हुआ है. बट जब वो मैं 100 रुपया GST भरता हूँ, उसका मुझे क्रेडिट मिलना चाहिए, राइटली सो. बट मैंने जिससे माल प्रोक्योर किया है उसने ही रिपोर्ट किया है सिर्फ 50 रुपये का GST, तो मेरा तो 50 का नुकसान हो गया. बट आई हैव टेकन 100, डिपार्टमेंट कम्स टू वी विद नोटिस कि आपने 50 ज़्यादा लिया है. द पॉइंट दैट आई एम ट्राइंग टू से इज they can't be issuing it under the 5-year limitation. वो 3 साल में ही आना चाहिए, क्योंकि इसमें मैंने सप्रेस थोड़ी किया है. मेरी गलती है कि उसने रिपोर्ट नहीं किया. Right? A very important point and a very interesting point that can be thought over. So what we are saying is that issuance of SCN under 74 on the issues of mismatch of ITC under GST or 2A versus 3B or mismatch of turnover may be challenged, as this does not amount to suppression, fraud or willful misstatement. I think it's a very important point. I think everyone should note this, because you never know, tomorrow on 31st May 2024 for financial year 1920 you might just receive a show cause notice saying कि भैया आपने क्रेडिट 50 लाख का लिया है, बट सामने वाले ने तो 25 लाख की रिपोर्ट किया है, बाकी 25 लाख रिवर्स करो. कैश लेजर से भरो एंड यू विल बी लाइक ओके बॉस, फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल यू नो you might be able to do that. I'm sorry, 1920 में तो he has the power till 2025. So अगर 2025 के बाद till 30th September 2025 he issues for 1920 under 2A3B, that is something that can be challenged. Anyway, if it's too confusing, you can call me later. That's okay. We go to the next slide. So these were the powers and the time limits. Again, this is a follow-on to what the notices, जो notice issue होती है वो ऐसे issue नहीं कर सकते हैं. They have to give the opportunity to the taxpayer of a hearing before a show cause notice is issued. And this is again a very technical point, very valid point and a very practical point as well. I'll tell you why. So the law until 15th October 2020 said that, you know, in terms of so and so rules, etc., a pre-show cause notice consultation with the assessee has to done. It means that if the officer thinks in cases other than audit investigations ki, you know, this is an issue and you should have paid tax on this, but you've not paid tax on this, आप आ जाओ, बातचीत करते हैं, आपको चाय पे बुलाएंगे. They'll do that consultation. They'll try to understand from you कि सर आपने क्यों नहीं भरा है. This was mandated under law till the 15th of October 2020, but after that, you know, they've removed it. The point of this is not to harass the taxpayer unnecessarily. Trust me, sir, हम ये point पे High Court से stay लेके आए on a show cause notice. Yeah, I'll tell you how. So the point was like this, that this was under the service tax. For one of our clients, income tax return में उन्होंने turnover report किया था 74 crores. That was the income tax return turnover, 74 crores. Service tax return, this is for financial year 14-15. Service tax return, he has reported the turnover of 2 crores. The tax officer, the service tax officer, picks up both the returns, says कि भैया 74 income tax में यहाँ पे 2 crore. Let me do one thing. Difference कितना आया? 72 crore. Service tax rate 12.36. Show cause notice. क्लाइंट बोलता है बॉस यश 8 crore 92 lakhs का शो कॉज नोटिस जस्ट बिकॉज देयर इज अ मिसमैच बिटवीन इनकम टैक्स रिटर्न एंड सर्विस टैक्स रिटर्न. व्हाट डू वी डू? जस्ट टेल अस आइडिया. लेट्स गो टू द बॉम्बे हाई कोर्ट. लेट्स फाइल अ रिट पिटिशन. वी गो टू द बॉम्बे हाई कोर्ट. The Bombay High Court, very good bench. Justice Bhuyan and Ujjwal Bhuyan, he is now the Supreme Court judge. Our counsel is arguing the matter. So we tell him that, sir, you know, the department without application of mind has issued this notice. You please understand, my lords, 4 crores I'm reporting in income tax, 2 crores I'm reporting in service tax. There is a reason why I'm reporting 2 crore, no? 72 crore का मेरे को मालूम है मैंने क्यों रिपोर्ट नहीं किया. वो exempt है, बेसिक ये नोटिफिकेशन है, ले लो. The judge is like, very well, counsel for the department, your arguments. He says, sir, why have they come to the High Court? There is a remedy. They can argue this before us. Sir, why are you harassing the assessee with a 9 crore demand? Do you understand 9 crore is what? And as per the provision of law, did you do a pre-SCN consultation? No. Thrown out. This is a stay on the show cause notice.
So just adding to that, like, and of course, going to High Court is an extraordinary remedy. You don't do it every time and at the drop of the hat. But whenever there's a breach of natural justice, so where the department has not heard you or not allowed you to file a reply, that instantly you can take it to the High Court and they will throw it out. Because breach of natural justice is a golden test. Then they don't need to go through the normal adjudication route. If there's a breach of natural justice, you can instantly knock the doors of the High Court and, you know, take your remedy.
So yeah, moving on to the next part. This is ultimately the next phase. प्री कंसल्टेशन हो गया, उसके बाद भी शो कॉज नोटिस आ गया, तो आप क्या कर सकते हो? यू कैन आर्ग्यू द मैटर आर्ग्यू कर लो ऑफिसर के साथ. वो तो नेगेटिव ऑर्डर ही पास करेगा अनलेस द ऑफिसर अंडरस्टैंड्स द लॉ एंड इज जेन्युइनली नॉट अ प्रो रेवेन्यू पर्सन. सो यू फाइल एन अपील टू द एपेलेट अथॉरिटी. एपेलेट अथॉरिटी मतलब उसका बॉस, हायर बॉस. यूजुअली ये सब असिस्टेंट कमिश्नर्स होते हैं या डेप्यूटी कमिश्नर्स होते हैं जो आपको नोटिस इशू करेंगे. एपेलेट अथॉरिटी मतलब जॉइंट कमिश्नर या कमिश्नर. So these are certain timelines The important thing is that when you file an appeal, you need to give a 10% pre-deposit. Very important. अगर आपका 50 लाख का डिमांड है, उसमें इंटरेस्ट और पेनल्टी जोड़ के 1 करोड़ है, तो you have to pay 10% deposit before you file an appeal to the appellate authority on the tax amount only of 50 lakhs. But तो भी वो 5 लाख रुपए हो गया. That gets stuck till the time you don't win the matter either at the tribunal or the high court. Litigation, very irritating. But we are at a stage, phase 3 of GST is going to be all about litigation. These are certain pointers. Maximum 3 adjournments allowed. You can take 3 times of excuses of not appearing, etc. Orders must be written stating points for determination, etc. These are certain points that we consider. But yeah, this is the modality of filing an appeal to the appellate authority. Next slide. Okay. So the entire audit and investigation part was about it. Happy to take any questions and we can move on to the next part. This is also recent circulars, etc. that are very relevant from individual directors, etc. So if there are no further questions on audit and investigation, we can move to the next part of the... Sure, sir.
You received, suppose we received so first.
Sure.
You replied to that.
Right.
So order has to automatically come before the date or we have to follow?
No, the order will be... So there is a particular timeline stipulated under the law that the order needs to be issued. से अगर आपका 18-19 का है तो हमने जैसे वहाँ पे बोला था अगर आपको जनवरी में आ गया तो मार्च तक ऑर्डर आना ही है. So they have to issue the order. नहीं आया तो so in that case then it's time barred, right?
After that period, they can't issue the order. That is also practically what will happen is you will not get the order by that timeline, let's say 30th April, but they will backdate it.
They will backdate.
They will send it to you like 1 month after, but they'll date it as 30th April. So that they very well will do. Yeah, they'll have to.
They are binded.
They are bound. They have to do it within that time. So they will send it to you much later, but date it as 30th April.
So, can we have 2 mics, please, for the question answer?
Yeah,
We
yeah.
have 2 mics over there.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't need glasses.
So maybe somebody is reaching your office under search and seizure. I'm running my show with 2 or 3 different names, and they are coming with one search or maybe seizure search report. Do they have right to go into my other company's record?
So, for search and seizure, while we have not covered it in detail, there is a procedure to be followed. They have to give that entity a 15-day notice prior to coming, etc., etc. So, you may say that that entity, they have not followed that procedure. That could be a defense that you can take.
I have heard usually they manage to get order in other company name also
Yeah.
during search.
Yeah,
Is it true?
yeah, practically that happens, sir. So,
Thank you.
Okay. Happy to take questions even after the session on audit investigations, etc. So just moving on with the session. Again, this is not a very recent circular, but again, last financial year. And most of the people sitting over here would may be aware of this, but we just thought that it's very important that this be covered. So this is a very interesting issue that the GST department has clarified. मतलब ये वही question है कि इस पे GST लगेगा कि नहीं लगेगा. But ये issue क्या है? So this is clarification related to taxability of personal guarantee. Okay. I'd explain it very simply. You are the director or a promoter of a company. Okay. You go to the bank, tell the bank that, look, I need a I need a credit line for my company. I'm the director of that company. Okay. And I need a credit line for that. So please, and on behalf of that credit line, I am giving you my personal guarantee. ठीक है? The question is like this, that first of all, when the director is providing the guarantee to the bank for the credit line to be given to the company, okay, for the guarantee which is given by the director of a company to the bank, for the bank to give the credit line to the company, can this be considered that the director is actually providing a service to the company and whether this is leviable to GST. This is the question. आप बैंक को जाके बोल रहे हो कि भैया मैं गारंटी देता हूँ ना, मेरी कंपनी को प्लीज़ लोन दे दो. You give a credit line to that. Can this be considered that the director is providing a service, okay, to the company? So the point is that the director and the company under the GST law are considered as related persons. They are known as related parties. Today, if the transaction is structured in such a way between the director and the company, कि company बोलती है कि director, thank you so much. You know, you've gotten me a credit line from the bank and you've given your personal guarantee to the bank. But, you know, between us, can we just agree कि consideration नहीं मिलेगा यार, आप तो director हो company के. You know, the company is not going to give you any consideration for that. But the GST law is very smart. The legislation says that any transaction between a related party is deemed to be a supply of service or goods, whatever it is. मतलब अगर related party के बीच में transaction हुआ, even without consideration, आपकी दो एंटिटी है, उसमें आपने ट्रांजैक्शन किया, आप बोल रहे हो कि मैं पैसे नहीं लूँगा तुझसे, तो गवर्नमेंट बोलेगा ऐसे कैसे नहीं लेगा, ये तो सर्विस है. You have to deem a value to it.
How do you decide value?
Yes, sir. So if you see the first bullet point, generally, if a transaction is there between unrelated parties under GST, the transaction, the valuation on which the tax has to be charged is the transaction value. मतलब आप जो value बोलोगे, that is deemed to be the value. But when it comes to related parties, there is a mechanism that needs to be followed. The first point is that it needs to be a open market value, मतलब fair value. आज अगर आप रिलेटेड पर्सन के साथ ट्रांजैक्शन करते हो तो बाहर आपको मार्केट में जो 10 रुपये की चीज़ मिल रही है वो आप एक दूसरे के साथ 5 रुपये में नहीं ले सकते हो, बिकॉज दैट इज़ नॉट द ओपन मार्केट वैल्यू. सो जनरली द ओपन मार्केट वैल्यू अंडर GST इज डिटरमाइंड बाय व्हाट, जनरली ये लॉ में लिखा नहीं हुआ है, जनरली इज डिटरमाइंड आपके इनकम टैक्स का जो आपका ट्रांसफर प्राइसिंग होता है ना बिटवीन रिलेटेड पार्टीज, उससे डिटरमाइन हो जाता है. और यू हैव टू डिटरमाइन अ ओपन मार्केट वैल्यू. What is the market value of that transaction? You need to give it the same value between related parties, the most important thing. But just finishing this point, so ultimately what we are saying is that the transaction is structured such between the company and the director where there is no consideration involved. But the law still says that it's a related party, you will have to give it a consideration. There has to be a consideration to it. But look at the beauty of the law. Okay? GST है ना, स्टैंड अलोन कभी नहीं चलता है, नेवर. एंड in fact that's applicable to other legislations as well, but specifically tax laws. There is always a interplay, okay, of what the RBI has to say. There is always a interplay sometimes of what SEBI has to say. This is how laws and legislatures work together. So the RBI has, said one thing, that ऐसा कोई transaction है where the director of a company is coming to a commercial bank, telling the commercial bank that please give a loan to my company. The RBI has said that you have to be very cautious about this. Please ensure that no consideration is flowing by the company to the director for such a transaction. क्योंकि these are ways of circulating the money to the director, to the promoter for a consideration. वहाँ से money launder होता है. There are multiple structures that can be made. So the RBI का एक specifically circular आया है उस पे. It says, and I'm reading bullet point number 2 over here. So through para 2.2.9 of circular so and so dated November 21, it says that the RBI clarified that no consideration by way of commission, brokerage fee or any other form can be paid to the director by the company directly or indirectly in lieu of providing personal guarantee to the bank. RBI ने बोल दिया, डिपार्टमेंट ने, GST ने क्लैरिफाई, अभी RBI ने बोल दिया नो वैल्यू तो नो वैल्यू. That's it. It's not leviable to GST. So, but this is what the circular clarifies. But there are certain exceptional situations, and this is the last bullet point that I'm reading. There may be cases where the director who had provided the guarantee is no longer connected with the management, but continuance of his guarantee is considered essential because the new management's guarantee is either not available or found inadequate, or there may be other exceptional cases where the promoter, directors, etc. are paid remuneration consideration for such activities. मतलब essentially general course of business में they don't allow you to do this, but there are certain exceptional circumstances, and let me take 30 seconds more to explain this better. Look at the way it's explaining. What is it saying? वो लोग बोल रहे हैं कि is no longer connected with the management. So what essentially it's trying to say is कि वो director जो है उसने guarantee दे के रखी है बैंक को, but now he is no more a director of the company. Then there can be a value, then there can be a consideration that can be received by the company. So essentially what the RBI is trying to do is they're trying to ensure that this transaction is not a related party transaction. कंपनी से डायरेक्टर को पैसा नहीं जाना चाहिए ये सब चीज़ों के लिए. दैट इज़ द शॉर्ट पॉइंट. क्या ये सर एज पर द लॉ टुडे व्हेन यू से ब्लड रिलेशन एज इन बिकॉज द कंपनी हाँ कैन यू राइट to the brother's company, to the bank. Yeah, so...
I mean, there is no consideration, of course, it's a consideration of power and effect.
Right.
I mean, can this be considered as a service with tax?
So sir, in that case, in fact, I'll just cover in the next slide. So this was a specific situation of a director of a company to the bank. Now just going to the next slide, the situation that you have, highlighted over here, you as a standalone person, you are saying you are a standalone person who does not have any relationship with the company, correct? Or do you have a relationship? Because sir आप तो proprietor हो, आप तो वो company के director हो नहीं, तो वो related party वैसे qualify नहीं होगा.
Not with company, but to the director of the company, yes, related.
So essentially you are saying that you are a standalone person who is giving a guarantee to the bank for the bank to give and he happens to your brother. I don't think this will qualify as a related party. This may not qualify as a related party.
Or maybe, yeah, okay. Quick question, I'm sorry. So,
Sure.
We said about taxation, so guarantee. What about intercorporate guarantee? Does it fall under taxable?
Intercorporate guarantee, at present there is no such clarification. This is on personal guarantees. Okay, yeah, sorry. But again, in this case, so this is a separate situation where another company, you mean to say one company giving guarantee to the bank for lending the credit line to another company? Yes, that is exactly the situation that's covered over here. Over here, yes, let me cover this. Your question will get covered over here. So sir, in that question that you asked me, you are a standalone individual, okay? आपका जो question था, you are giving the guarantee to the bank and the bank is offering the credit line to the company who is your brother. The director is your brother. If there is a relationship established between you and the company of a related party, then, and how can that be? That probably would be in a situation if you have a particular stake or a holding in your brother's company. अगर कुछ भी relation नहीं है, सिर्फ blood relation है, that might be difficult. Yes, then yes. Then, sorry? If he's a shareholder of the company, then it's a related party transaction, not leviable to tax.
The example, in case you both are many directors or key managerial persons in your respective companies and you belong to the same family, then there is a possibility to consider them as related.
He is also a director or has some holding in the company or
So-
controls the company.
So, as per the definition of related party, because the last entry I'm just reading, promoters or managerial persons are members of the same family. So maybe that may come.
Only if he's a manager or a promoter.
So in his example, what I
Other relationship only with the company.
yeah, so what it says is promoters or managerial persons are members of the same family. So maybe from that perspective.
Okay, so moving on to the intercorporate guarantee bit. Sorry. Moving to the intercorporate guarantee, जो हमने first slide देखी थी, that was specifically in relation to a director of a company giving the guarantee to the bank. In this case, a company or a holding company, there are two separate scenarios, okay, gives the guarantee to the bank to secure the credit facilities to the other company, or it might be a subsidiary company. It might be a subsidiary company and the other company. In that case, either you know it may be a subsidiary के लिए एक परसेंटेज होल्डिंग से ज़्यादा होना चाहिए, अगर वो नहीं है तो भी वो रिलेटेड कंपनी हो जाएगी. इन बोथ द केसेस दिस विल बी ट्रीटेड एज अ सप्लाई ऑफ अ सर्विस. नाउ even if it's made without a consideration, so the same example applies, only the director की जगह पे वो company आ गया, so it's a inter-corporate guarantee. In this case, the GST department has specifically clarified that Rule 28(2) states that the value of supply of such services shall be deemed to be 1% of the amount of such guarantee offered or the actual consideration, whichever is higher. So in such cases, when say I am the holding company, okay, I need some credit facilities for the bank, my brother or my brother's company gives the guarantee to the bank and the bank. So this transaction between my company and my brother's company will be deemed to be related party transaction. मैं वो कंपनी को बोलता हूँ कि बॉस मैं आपको पैसा नहीं दूंगा ये सब के लिए, जीएसटी डिपार्टमेंट बोलेगा नहीं पैसा तो तू देगा, अगर नहीं देगा तो मैं डीम करूँगा कि तूने पैसा दिया है. मैं डीम कैसे करूँगा? अगर आपके ब्रदर की कंपनी ने बैंक को गारंटी दी है 1 करोड़ के लिए, दैट इज़ द वैल्यू ऑफ योर गारंटी, तो वो 1 करोड़ का 1% पे मैं 18% लगाऊंगा. वो 1 करोड़ के 1% पे मैं 18% लगाऊंगा. दैट इज हाउ इट विल बी डिटरमाइंड.
Is that considered to be an independent transaction? Like if there is a business between two entities.
राइट.
So, of course, you're not valuing the specific transaction, but there is an, I mean, both the company has interest with each other, doing business with each other.
राइट.
Even then, this will be applied.
Yes sir, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It will be applied.
This is for proprietor, partner, LLP, private limited,
That's correct. Everyone.
personal. No one is barred.
No one is barred.
But an individual, if he is giving you a proprietor guarantee, then
Individual, you mean to say not a director of the company? Does not qualify as a director of the company. Sir, we'll just have to see the language of the notification because it applies only to a director. It talks only about a director of the company. So, I understand. आपका क्वेश्चन है आप प्रोप्राइटर हो, आप डायरेक्टर नहीं हो.
I have a proprietor company.
करेक्ट.
And as a proprietor, I have taken a loan.
करेक्ट.
And my brother has given a guarantee
करेक्ट.
to the bank as an individual.
Correct. The circular, sir, does not specifically apply to proprietorships, firms.
If you are talking about corporate entity is okay.
Correct.
It's a partnership company.
Correct.
Or suppose it's a proprietor company.
Correct.
Okay. And some third party, without any consideration, is giving a guarantee.
Correct.
So will GST be applicable?
So that's what I'm saying, sir. At present, the circular is specifically in relation to a director. It does not use the word proprietors or individuals. So,
There is a doubt, is what I understand. Can you please repeat this?
Sure.
again?
yeah, which point?
With a proper
Example of a
example.
proprietor or a company.
हाँ.
Other than a corporate.
Okay, if you can just go to the previous slide.
Everyone would have taken some facility from the bank and everyone has given some personal.
इसलिए मैं बोल रहा हूँ ना सर, वो डायरेक्टर और कंपनी के केस में स्पेसिफिक है. इंडिविजुअल प्रोप्राइटर्स का वो लोग ने जीएसटी सर्कुलर में मेंशन नहीं किया है. सो बट तो उस पर वो स्पेसिफिक इज देयर अ मेंशन? देयर इज नो मेंशन, नो. या सो इन दैट केस इनफैक्ट इट विल बी टैक्सेबल. या इट विल बी टैक्सेबल. ये केस में क्या हो रहा है, यहाँ पे टैक्स नहीं लग रहा है.
No, but then I am not taking any consideration. Na, if I am taking a guarantee.
So that's what I'm saying, sir. In that case, you will be deemed to be a related person and a value will be affixed to that. ये जो एग्जामेशन है ये स्पेसिफिकली आरबीआई ने जो एग्जामेशन दिया है वो डायरेक्टर और कॉर्पोरेट्स के लिए दिया हुआ है. आप तो इंडिविजुअल हो, इंडिविजुअल्स के लिए नहीं दिया है ना, तो उसके लिए तो सर वो वैल्यू डीम हो जाएगा और उस पर जीएसटी लगेगा. जी
सर, 2 एग्जाम्पल 3 एग्जाम्पल दे दीजिए. एक एग्जाम्पल प्रोप्राइटरशिप,
करेक्ट.
दूसरा एग्जाम्पल पार्टनरशिप,
करेक्ट.
तीसरा एग्जाम्पल कंपनी.
करेक्ट. ठीक. सॉरी, यू ऑल वांट टू ऐड समथिंग? दिस इज फाइन.
3 एग्जाम्पल से समझाइए तो थोड़ा क्लियरिटी ज़्यादा होगी.
श्योर. सो फर्स्ट एग्जाम्पल मैं देता हूँ डायरेक्टर. सो दिस जीएसटी जो सर्कुलर आया है, ओके, ये स्पेसिफिकली जो इट यूजेस द वर्ड डायरेक्टर एंड कंपनी. ओके, दीज बोथ थिंग्स आर वेरी सेपरेट फ्रॉम अ सोल प्रोप्राइटर प्रोप्राइटरशिप. इट्स वेरी सेपरेट फ्रॉम अ पार्टनर एंड अ पार्टनरशिप. ओके, डायरेक्टर और कंपनी हो गया प्राइवेट लिमिटेड का डायरेक्टर. सोल प्रोप्राइटर हो गया स्टैंड अलोन प्रोप्राइटर ऑफ अ सोल प्रोप्राइटरी फर्म. पार्टनर हो गया पार्टनरशिप का पार्टनर. इट्स अंडर द पार्टनरशिप एक्ट, इट्स अंडर द कंपनीज एक्ट, अंडर द एलएलपी एक्ट. ये 3 अलग चीज़ें हो गई. ओके Now, the GST circular uses the word director and company. So, in our strict reading, and please correct me, it uses the word, yeah. In our strict reading, it's applicable only to a director and a company situation. मतलब अगर आप फिर बोलोगे कि मैं प्रोपराइटर हूँ, मैं प्रोपराइटर जाके बैंक को बोल रहा हूँ कि मैं गारंटी देता हूँ तो मेरे भाई को दे दे, वो यहाँ पे कवर नहीं होता है. एंड लेट मी अगेन क्लैरिफाई कि ये क्या बोलता है. ये बोलता है कि इस पर जीएसटी नहीं लगेगा इफ़ यू आर अ डायरेक्टर एंड अ कंपनी. बट अगर आप सोल प्रोपराइटर हो, पार्टनरशिप फॉर्म हो, तो उसके लिए ये क्लैरिफिकेशन नहीं एप्लीकेबल होता है. मतलब जीएसटी लगेगा.
Okay, so just adding to Yash, so actually just see, first of all conceptual, ठीक है. अगर दो parties related party हैं तो even if there is no consideration, it is a deemed supply. तो ordinarily GST लगना चाहिए even if there is no consideration. Now coming to the clarification that is come out. The clarification, like Yash rightly pointed out, is in the context of director and company. In the context of director and company, they have relied on this RBI circular and said that while normally as per GST law, you have to pay GST on the open market value, but because RBI has clarified that no fees can be charged by the directors, therefore open market value itself is zero and therefore no GST applies. That was the logic. That is on the first example of director and company. Now coming to your examples of promoters. So while we had the advantage of looking at the RBI clarification, because like Yash pointed out, the CBIC circular on GST only talks about directors. It has no mention about promoters. But I may be able to rely on the very same RBI circular, which I am just reading out for everybody's benefit. This is on the zero consideration. Huh? Yeah. So banks should take personal guarantees of promoters, directors, other managerial persons or major shareholders for the credit facilities guaranteed to corporates, public or private, only if absolutely warranted, so on and so forth. So the RBI circular apparently also uses the word promoters and other managerial persons. So you may be able to rely on the RBI circular and argue that because the same RBI circular says ki zero fees for directors and zero fees for promoters, same logic, even if it is a promoter which is extending the guarantee and is a related party, GST should not apply. So you may be able to argue. Yeah. So RBI circular is broad enough to cover promoters also. That's all.
This leads me to ask a question. I mean, during business transactions, how many times a person or a businessman need to talk to his consultant, maybe a company like you? I mean, while providing such guarantee, you know, we never consult.
Yeah.
We only look at finance, bank,
Correct.
So, I mean, for every single signature or every single document we sign,
Right.
not only related to bank,
Right.
it can be any other document. So,
Sure.
I mean, do a businessman should ideally consult someone?
Yes, sir. So, and sir, this is a very honest and a genuine answer, and this is again coming out from our experience. This is nothing to do with we getting business or anything, sir. It's the last of our things. But sir, क्या होता है ना? Generally, what we do for certain clients, and especially since GST has been introduced, it's been 6-7 years. We generally do a health check for all the clients. Okay, we call this a GST review for the entire period from when the GST has been introduced. Okay, this review would essentially determine 8 to 10 very critical things. Okay, starting with your tax positions. अगर आप importer हो particular grade of rubber के, आप यहाँ पे डिस्ट्रीब्यूट करते हो, आप कहाँ से इंपोर्ट करते हो, क्या रेट पे इंपोर्ट करते हो, क्या BCD करते हो, कितने पे GST भरते हो, सब. इट्स नॉट ओनली अबाउट द रेट ऑफ टैक्स, इट्स अबाउट द टाइम ऑफ टैक्स. अगर आपने गलत टाइम पे भर दिया, इनवॉइस 1 Jan को रेस किया है, माल सप्लाई किया है 1 महीने बाद और गुड्स आपको रिसीव हुए थे नवंबर में, ऑल दीज थिंग्स, प्लेस ऑफ सप्लाई, मतलब CGST, SGST लगाना था, IGST लगाना था. 3 important pillars of GST. We see everything. Your correct claim of input tax credit, your correct reporting of returns, everything. Plus, all these things that are applicable. GST कौन से आपके, so we understand your business from A to Z. If you are a manufacturer, we'll get into the details. आप कहाँ से कितना क्या procure करते हो, ultimately आप retail में जाके माल बेचते हो, wholesale में बेचते हो, whatever. We do a supply chain study of each of the legs that are involved in your business operations, including things like these. Then we get into the nitty-gritties कि अच्छा, you know, you have a director, you're a private limited company, or you're a partner, you're a proprietorship, you might be doing such transactions. What are the implications? So we pull out everything. एक बार वो रिपोर्ट इशू हो जाता है, you know कि मेरे बिजनेस में ये ट्रांजैक्शंस होते हैं, इसमें कंसल्टेंट ने ये चीज़ बोली हुई है. सो एटलीस्ट इफ़ यू एज अ प्रमोटर और अ डायरेक्टर ऑफ द कंपनी आर इवन नॉट अवेयर, बट आपका जो टैक्स कंसल्टेंट या टैक्स इंटरनल टैक्स एडवाइजर है या CFO है, दे नो कि सर हम ये पोजिशन ले रहे हैं, दिस पे यू नो अ कंसल्टेंट है, टैक्स नीड्स टू बी पेड. व्हाट आई एम ट्राइंग टू से इज दैट यू हैव अ डॉक्यूमेंट इन योर हैंड. एक स्टैंडर्ड ऑपरेटिंग प्रोसीजर बन जाता है. That is what can be referred to by your accounts team, by your tax team, by your finance guys. So whenever such clarifications come. And secondly, sir, with a lot of our clients, you know, we have these kind of arrangements, you know, where with some amount of minimal fee, we keep guiding them and telling them what are the new updates that are coming in law. Like things like these, sir, personal guarantees. Now, who can imagine that a personal guarantee पे GST लगेगा या नहीं लगेगा, मतलब you know there are so many nitty-gritty things. And precisely so, let me tell you that for one of our clients, we were in fact doing a due diligence. They want to exit, the promoters want to exit the company now. They're going quite old. They're into logistics. They were very good business, amazing business, but poor documentation, sir. डॉक्यूमेंटेशन वॉज वेरी पुअर. इनवॉइसेस बराबर से किए नहीं थे. दे वर डीलिंग विद फॉरेन एयरलाइंस, वहाँ से कुछ रीएम्बर्समेंट ले रहे थे पूरा, और वो लोग के अग्रीमेंट में लिखा था कि हम एयरलाइन से रीएम्बर्समेंट लेंगे एक 10% सरचार्ज के साथ. एंड दे वर नॉट पेइंग GST ऑन द एंटायर अमाउंट. दे वर सेइंग, दे वर टेकिंग अ पोजिशन दैट वी आर अ प्योर एजेंट, दिस दैट. हमने ऑडिट किया, बोला भाई यू हैव टू पे. दे अल्टीमेटली पेड अप अराउंड 1.5 to 3 CR on that when they have to wind up the business. Reserves थे इसलिए वो लोग ने भर दिए. But then we were internally feeling so bad that you know when GST came in at that time वो लोग ने थोड़ा review test check करवा लिया होता that you know whether we are doing is correct or not. Because see sir, what happens is, no, with these small amounts, like I told you, Alcobev company, not a big amount, 15 crores is not a big amount, sir, of tax. These guys then come and sit on your head. He said that forget it, you know, yeah, let's just pay this 1.5 CR. I don't want a headache. मेरे को कंपनी एग्जिट करनी है. मैं जिसको आगे जाके सेल करूँगा या लिक्विडेट भी करूँगा, आई डोंट वांट दीज हेडेक्स. द GST डिपार्टमेंट विल नॉट अलाउ मी टू कैंसिल माई रजिस्ट्रेशन बिकॉज ही टेल मी कि ये इतना पेएबल है विद इंटरेस्ट पेनल्टी एक्सेट्रा. सो सर व्हाट वी आर ट्राइंग टू से इन अ वेरी शॉर्ट दिस थिंग, एंड इट्स genuinely from the concern of a taxpayer, that ensure that all these things are proper, because these guys are getting stricter day by the day. And it's, you know, things like these, if you're not maintaining documents properly, unfortunately you are not able to logically explain why you have done what you have done. Very critical. So generally this is how we do it for clients.
Source of information from the department whether the guarantee has been issued or not.
Sir, you think so let me tell you this. GST department, nahi sir, in fact GST department doesn't operate standalone. It fetches data from income tax, it fetches data from the registrar of companies. If you are a listed entity, वो SEBI से data मंगवाएगा. ये लोग सब, you know, and that is where I'll tell you the major goof up happens. Like I told you, the example that I gave you of the Bombay High Court, इनकम टैक्स रिटर्न उठाया, सर्विस टैक्स रिटर्न उठाया, डिफरेंस उठा के टैक्स भर दिया. अभी ये उसके हाथ में इनकम टैक्स रिटर्न मेरा कहाँ से आया? वो तो सर्विस टैक्स वाला है ना. This is how information gets exchanged most of the times.
I have a request to chairman in your presence today. I think, you know, here ROC related activities are ignored in most of the businesses, like a small business like us. So we can arrange a seminar and they can say something on ROC, how documents are to be maintained.
Yeah, sure,
How
absolutely.
reviews are to be maintained and how essential they are. Because here when I say ROC, we write that a guarantee has to be issued and they are.
Right.
I mean, that's the source from where they.
Yes, sir. Because you file your balance sheets with them every year. Yes, sir. We have a separate corporate team, sir. We have our specialized corporate partners. They can come down and take a session on that as well. Thank you. Yes. So this was essentially on personal guarantee, corporate guarantee, and just moving forward quickly. Clarification with respect to services provided by the director of a company. again, this is a very important circular. Not very important, but this clarifies a critical aspect. That if again, this is again in the context of a director and a company. Director and a company not applicable to proprietors, partners, partnerships. If a director is supplying service of renting of immovable property, you, any of your individuals are a director of a company, you have a property in your own name, you want to give that property in your personal capacity to your own company in your personal capacity, it's not liable to GST under RCM. But if you do it in a capacity of a director itself, essentially you are charging money from the company, okay, for the renting of those premises, then in that case, you will be liable to pay GST on reverse charge mechanism. This is so, sir. This is in the context of you giving a property on rent to your company. Essentially, your company would be using that property for commercial reasons. So even if the property that you are giving on rent is a residential property, that would still qualify over here because it is being used for commercial purposes. So
Though the individual may not be registered under GST, the company has to pay RCM.
yeah, that's correct. We'll move on to the next one. So again, and this is one of the most interesting topics that I think will heat up and bring up a lot of questions. What we are going to discuss, one of the circulars that we'll discuss, it's a dated circular, July 2023 mein aaya hai, but this brought in a lot of fundamental concepts and issues in place which Anushri will be taking up. But just giving a very brief 30-second background, and then Anushri can just take up the entire this thing. This is essentially in relation to branch head offices and the branch offices. So today, all of us have our head office, I'm assuming in Bombay, must be having our branch offices located across various states. Under GST, while a single PAN is obtained for all our head offices and branch offices, PAN एक ही मिलेगा आपको, but under GST there is a concept of distinct person. Okay, all your head offices and branch offices are considered as different people. They're considered as a different legal person, even your branch office. So the question that came over here, very interesting ones, कि अगर आपके head office ने कोई service ली है, जैसे कि audit service ली है, can I say that my head office is utilizing that audit service? You'll say, I have branches across India. It's not that I'm going to get my branches audited separately. मैंने अगर auditor से 10 लाख का बिल आया है और अगर 1,80,000 GST मैंने उस पर भरा हुआ है, तो वो 1,80,000 का GST मैं as a branch office अकेला क्यों खाऊँ? I have to give it to the branch, to the HO अकेला क्यों खाऊँ? To give it to the branch offices. Second is that there are a lot of services that a head office provides to the branch offices. One example could be of salary of service. Today, all the employees of your branch are actually on the payroll of your head office. Generally, that's the situation. But the point is that the sales of your branch office is recorded over there, right? So the equivalent cost of that sale with respect to the salary of the employees is recorded in the head office. तो head office बोलेगा बॉस मैं 100 रुपये का सेल कर रहा हूँ, तू 200 का कर रहा है, मैं cost employees का तेरा, why should I do it? You please take the bear of the cost of your branch, no? So allocate that cost over there. These are certain fundamental issues because the head office and branch office under GST are considered separate people. So now the question comes in कि first of all, is this leviable to GST number 1? GST लगेगा क्या इस पे? मतलब किस पे? अगर वो ऑडिट सर्विस HOBO को क्रेडिट एलोकेट कर रहा है या इंटरनली ये जो एम्प्लॉय का कॉस्ट है वो हेड ऑफिस या ब्रांच ऑफिस में एलोकेट कर रहा है, उस पर GST लगेगा क्या? अनुश्री विल टेल दैट. सेकेंड, अगर लगेगा तो कैसे लगाऊँ? हाउ डू आई डू इट? व्हाट इज द मैकेनिज्म? दैट इज व्हाट द सर्कुलर क्लैरिफाइज. वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग वन. आई लाइक टू आस्क अनुश्री टू टेक अप दिस सेशन.
Hi, good evening everyone. Thank you, Yash. So, as explained by Yash, this is going to be a very interesting issue which has been clarified by GST. So, there's a concept which right now he just touched upon, which I want to like to elaborate. So under GST, unlike under income tax, a company is a single entity. Under any other law, company is a single entity. It will have only one legal presence in it, in the entire country. GST being a center and a state law, it has a unique concept where the states, where a single company having having multiple presence in different states, all these entities are considered as a separate entity for the purpose of GST. They are required to obtain separate registrations, and therefore they are called distinct persons under GST. Now there are two concepts. One is regarding outward supplies. So what happens is, the first question which arises is that if a head office provides any services to the branch office, is that leviable to GST? To which the concept comes in, a concept called cross charge, which says that supplies between a head office and branch office, whether there is a consideration or whether there is no consideration, shall be treated as a supply under GST and will be leviable to GST. So the first question, concept which came in was cross charge, which says that GST is leviable. The second part of it was valuation. So for valuation, they say just similar to what related parties, we take an open market value for valuing the transactions between related parties. Similarly, because we are taxing a transaction even without consideration under GST, they take an open market value as a transaction value on which GST shall be leviable. So between a head office and a branch office, any services or any goods which are supplied, they shall be valued at an open market transaction, and GST should be levied on them. Now, the second interesting concept which comes in is called ISD. Now, what is an ISD? So basically, just as explained by Yash, there might be some services which a head office avails, but it avails on behalf of branch offices also, like auditing, like legal services. There can be n number of services for which a head office undertakes a transaction, but these services are attributable to the branch offices also. So the mechanism of distribution of ITC between head office and branch office is known as the concept is known as ISD. Now this concept is not new, so this was there in service tax also. But the difference is that these two concepts have a very overlapping kind of a arrangement. Therefore, this circular was brought in to clarify where the industry was facing an issue of when they used to do a cross charge, they were being questioned that why did you not go for ISD? And when they did for ISD, they were questioned why did you not go for cross charge? And because GST has involvement of state department revenue, therefore one state department and the other state department used to often disallow the ITC taken in their particular states, stating that they are at a loss of revenue because of us utilizing a ITC amount in a particular manner. So this clarification was something which the industry was looking for, because there was a lot of litigation on whether ISD is mandatory, whether cross charge is mandatory, how does it apply, what all should be covered in, what all transactions should be covered in ISD and what all should be covered under cross charge. So this circular has created, this circular basically has brought in a distinction where it talks about third-party services and internally generated services. So what is a third-party services? Third-party services are generally those services which are obtained from a third party for which there is an invoice which is being issued in the name of head office, but may be attributable to branch offices also. So that services which are availed from a third party, which are attributable to branch offices also, the GST department has clarified that you can either follow the mechanism of ISD or you can have followed the mechanism of cross charge. So basically it states that ISD is optional in nature, and therefore you are not up till now required to undertake ISD. Even if you have done cross charge, that is also okay, and that is acceptable in law. So just to briefly come back on the issue of ISD, taking one step back, how does an ISD mechanism work? So basically ISD mechanism is you obtain a separate registration for your business as an ISD registration. That is a separate office. There all the common inputs, services, all the invoices are received by that particular office. Then that particular office again issues further invoices on a proportionate basis of the turnover of the branches. In that particular ratio, it issues tax invoices to the branches, and the branches can claim ITC on the basis of that tax invoice. Now the second clarification, which was issued by the circular, was as regarding internally generated services. The second and the third, both of them are for internally generated services. So now what is an internally generated service? So as Yash was giving an example, that cost of employees. So employees are employed by the head office, but they are also giving services to the branch office. Or there can be another instances where there is some call center services which are attributable for all the branches. So for any internally generated service where one branch office or head office is providing services to other branch offices and head office, that outward transaction, that services which are internally generated are considered for for those services, a cross charge needs to be done, wherein you value those services, you pay an outward tax on those services, and then the branch offices, being a separate entity, they claim ITC basis that invoice on which you have paid GST. So for internally generated services, at point number 2, the government came with a very interesting clarification, which was already there in rules, but which was not very clearly manifested. So they came up with a clarification saying, if your branch office, which is the recipient branch office, if it has an option to claim the entire ITC, that is, there is no restriction on availment of that ITC with the branch offices, then you have an option to not cross charge, that is to cross charge at a zero value, because that is a revenue neutral impact. Either you can claim as a company, I am legally entitled to avail ITC. So as a company, I should not be harassed that I should pay an outward tax and then claim an ITC in a subsequent state. If I'm legally entitled to avail ITC at X state, then I should even be allowed to claim that ITC in some other state. So for that reason, they came up with this rule where they said that usually your valuation should have been at open market value. But in cases if your recipient branch offices are eligible to entire ITC, then any value declared in your invoice shall be treated as the open market value. Whether it is a nil value, whether it is a entire 100% value, or whatever value you want to adopt. Unlike the second one, the third point in the circular was slightly different. Now it says that if your branch office is not eligible for the entire ITC, then in that case you should value your services at an open market value. But the circular give us one leeway. It says that cost of salary of employees is not mandatorily required to be cross-charged. So it creates an exception where this exception was not there in the provisions, but it came only through this circular, wherein the cost of salary of an employee is not mandatorily required to be cross-charged. So the ITC in relation to that can be availed either at the head office or the branch offices. There's no restriction in that.
You say employee, that includes director's salary as well.
Yes.
And these are applicable for firm as well as company both.
Yes.
Both these.
This clarification is equally applicable to all the entities.
All sort of legal entities. So, in fact, just clarifying on a couple of points over here. Thanks. So, essentially, in point number 2, what they've said that for internally generated invoices, whether HO is mandatorily required to issue invoices to the branch offices. Because, see, we all will think like this, ki yaar, now when talking about cost of salaries, or for example, you say, what is a common expenditure that you incur for your branch offices also, okay? Exhibition. You may think that, what is the point of me raising it to them? Internal accounting, you can avoid it by doing certain internal adjustments. So, but this was a question in the mind of assessees, because before this, there was a negative ruling under the GST in the context of employee salaries. So, please understand, आज की तारीख में salary है ना, GST लगता नहीं है. वरना तो आपके हर एक एम्प्लॉय को जीएसटी लगना पड़ता सैलरी पे. सो देर इज़ अ रूलिंग विच सेड दैट व्हेन हेड ऑफिसेस आर चार्जिंग बेसिकली आर एम्प्लॉइंग पीपल हु आर एलोकेटेड टू द ब्रांच ऑल्सो, द हेड ऑफिस शुड आइडियली क्रॉस चार्ज द सैलरी कॉस्ट टू द ब्रांच जितना एलोकेबल है. अगर 10 एम्प्लॉय ब्रांच में है और टोटल 100 एम्प्लॉय एचओ में है, अगर 10 एम्प्लॉय एचओ का काम कर रहे हैं तो उसका कॉस्ट ब्रांच में जाना चाहिए. दिस रूलिंग सेड कि वो जो कॉस्ट आप डालोगे ना उस पर जीएसटी लगना चाहिए. दिस रूलिंग वॉज नॉट अ गॉड्स ग्रेस, इट वॉज नॉट अ हाई कोर्ट सुप्रीम कोर्ट रूलिंग. इट वॉज अ रूलिंग दैट वॉज स्पेसिफिकली सॉट बाय द एसएससी. स्पेसिफिकली एक कॉन्सेप्ट होता है एडवांस रूलिंग का, उसमें उसने जाके पूछा, इसलिए ये उसको ही लागू पड़ता है. सो देन क्वेश्चन स्टार्टेड कमिंग, अरे बॉस एम्प्लॉय पे करना है, एम्प्लॉय पे मेरे को करना है तो बाकी सब सर्विसेज का क्या, डू हैव टू स्टार्ट डूइंग इट. और अगर मुझे करना है तो मैं क्रॉस चार्ज करूँ कि आईएसडी. सो जिस एडिंग टू व्हाट अनुश्री सेड, क्रॉस चार्ज इज अ इनफॉर्मल कॉन्सेप्ट. लॉ में नहीं लिखा है क्रॉस चार्ज. लॉ में सिर्फ इनपुट सर्विस डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर यही मैकेनिज्म दिया हुआ है. पीपल आर डूइंग क्रॉस चार्ज. क्यों? क्योंकि आईएसडी करना है तो सेपरेट रजिस्ट्रेशन लो, एक्स्ट्रा कंप्लायंस होगा. आपको वही, अगर आप महाराष्ट्र में हो तो महाराष्ट्र में आपको एक स्पेशल आईएसडी रजिस्ट्रेशन लेना पड़ेगा टू डिस्ट्रीब्यूट द क्रेडिट टू योर ब्रांच ऑफिसेस. हाँ, तो आपका हेड ऑफिस जहाँ पे होगा वो हेड ऑफिस का तो एक जीएसटी रजिस्ट्रेशन होगा, बट उसका आईएसडी लेना पड़ेगा, वो डिस्ट्रीब्यूट करें. People were starting doing cross charge. Lot of confusion happened. अरे यार, एक तो एम्प्लॉयज़ पे कर रहे हैं, फिर एम्प्लॉयज़ पे कर रहे तो दूसरे पे भी करना चाहिए, नहीं करना चाहिए. स्टेट ऑफिसर्स क्वेश्चन पूछ रहे, आईएसडी करे, क्रॉस चार्ज करे. Hence this circular. This clarifies on 3 important things like Anushri said. Internally generated invoices like exhibition, ये वो. HO is mandatorily required to raise an invoice. The question is not required, subject to the fact. लॉ में भी एक ऐसा प्रोविजन दिया हुआ है, एंड व्हाट शी इज़ एक्सप्लेनिंग इज़ कि सी अंडरस्टैंड वन थिंग, कि लॉ क्या बोलता है कि सामने वाला, आप किसी को सर्विस दे रहे हो, यू आर द सप्लायर ऑफ सर्विस, सामने वाला रिसिपेंट हो गया. ओके, रिसिपेंट को अगर पूरा आईटीसी अवेलेबल है, मतलब ही इज़ नॉट बार्ड बाय एनी नेचर, उसका कोई एग्जाम सप्लाई नहीं है, पूरा आईटीसी अवेलेबल है, तो आप उसको कुछ भी ट्रांजैक्शन वैल्यू लगाओ यार, फ़र्क नहीं पड़ता, क्योंकि उस पर अगर आप जीएसटी लगाओ वो पूरा क्रेडिट लेगा. ये स्टेट को भी बेनिफिट नहीं है, वो स्टेट को भी बेनिफिट नहीं है, जीरो लगाओ चलेगा. दैट इज़ व्हाट द सर्कुलर सेज. तो अगर आप एग्जीबिशन के खर्चा 100 रुपया हुआ है और वो आपके ब्रांच को पूरा क्रेडिट अवेलेबल है, वो कुछ भी एग्जेम्प्ट नहीं कर रहा है, लेट इट गो. दिस इज व्हाट द सर्कुलर क्लैरिफाइज. Lastly, it says for internal, what is the transaction value for the supplier for when full is not available to the concerned BO, and specifically for the perspective of salary. So, is the cost of salary of employees of the head office involved in providing the said service to the branch office is not mandatorily required to be included while computing the taxable value. मतलब वो जो रूलिंग आया था उसको नेगेट कर दिया वो लोग ने. सीधी बात है ना बॉस, आप सैलरी पे GST लगाओगे, the cash flow implication is huge. You will get the credit, but आपका कोई पर्टिकुलर ब्रांच है विच इज़ केटरिंग टू अ पोटेंशियल मेजर कस्टमर, वहाँ पे 50 नहीं 100 एम्प्लॉयज़ बैठे हैं, उसमें से कोई डायरेक्टर वायरेक्टर वहाँ पे बैठा है, उसके सैलरी पे आप GST लगा रहे हो, कितना कैश फ्लो आपका एक महीने का 18% का, इट्स अ opportunity cost. This is what essentially it was. A lot of litigation around it. In fact, Anushri, Stella and all, they've been dealing with a lot of clients who have faced these issues in the writ courts.
Before going to the next one, there is an important update in this. So, Finance Act 2024, although under GST there were no major changes which were brought in, but this was one of the major changes where, although through the circular they have clarified that up till now the provisions of ISD are optional in nature, going forward the government has an intention to make these ISD provisions mandatory. Although they have not notified a date yet, but the provisions have come in through Finance Act which says that ISD is going to be mandatorily required to be done for any entity going forward.
This is the phase 2 of GST. Phase 3 is yet to come.
The second concept, E-invoicing. So with the development of GST over these 7 years, this particular concept of E-invoicing has also developed. They have been 6 phases of introduction of E-invoicing. Now, before going into the phases, I want to first discuss regarding E-invoicing. What is E-invoicing and why was there a need to bring in E-invoicing? So E-invoicing is basically reporting your invoices, certain details of your invoices in a particular format on an portal, invoice registration portal. While doing so, you generate a specific unique number known as invoice reference number, which is allocated to an invoice to give a special identity to that invoice. That is how it is recorded with the GST portal. And then the GST authorities, and even for as a business taxpayers, where we have hundreds and thousands of transactions on a monthly basis, and we are required to file a monthly return, wherein we are required to report each and every single transaction, which is called GSTR1, where we are required to report each and every outward transaction. So this is just a mechanism to facilitate you in reporting, so that you do not have to again and again. It's a mechanism of linking the invoices and your returns, so that the GST department gets the information in a timely manner, and you do not have to waste your time sitting and entering each and every detail of a invoice over the GSTR on a monthly basis. So this is the concept of E-invoicing. Now the first thing which I want to highlight here is that this does not do away with our accounting mechanism. So in our accounting systems, our ERPs and everything, we still continue to record our invoices, issue an invoice. It is just that invoice is now registered with the GST portal. It is being allocated a unique identity number and a QR code from where it is made accessible for the GST department and for you to keep a track of all your invoices. So that is the concept of E-invoicing. So it started in 2020, wherein in the first phase of GST E-invoicing implications, only those entities whose threshold used to cross 500 crores were required to report E-invoicing. Gradually that limit were reduced over a period of 6 years, and currently it is at 5 crores. So if your turnover for any financial year starting from 17-18 till today has crossed the threshold of 5 crores, you are required to compulsorily issue an e-invoice. Now, the second concept of it is regarding e-invoices is e-invoices are required to be issued only for two class of transactions. One is B2B supplies, which is from a registered person to another registered person, business to business transactions. The second part of it is towards any SEZs or for exports, so which are called the zero rated transactions for those. So these are the two kind of supplies which are currently covered under e-invoicing. You are required to issue an e-invoice if you are doing any B2B transaction, or if you are entering into any export transaction, or if you are supplying any services or goods to SEZ units. Now this e-invoicing also has certain exemptions. So amongst other exemptions, government departments are also exempted from the requirement of issuing e-invoice. So due to these circumstances, there were a lot of issues in the industry, and therefore they have issued up this clarification which talks about applicability of e-invoice from a registered person who is currently has crossed the threshold of 5 crores, whether he is required to issue a e-invoice to those governmental departments, governmental authorities basically, who are only registered under GST for the sole issue of deducting TDS under section 51. So basically government units are required to deduct a TDS on GST portion for any transactions entered into with the government departments. So why is this important? Why was this clarification required? Because e-invoicing was applicable only on B2B transaction, which is from a registered person to a registered person. But technically speaking, these government departments are registered only for the purpose of deducting TDS. So there was an ambiguity whether these should be considered as B2B transactions or whether these should be considered as B2C transactions, which is business to unregistered persons or to the customers. So in this case, the circular has very clearly clarified that even if the departments are registered under GST only for the purpose of TDS, there also this e-invoicing is required to be issued. And the e-invoicing mechanisms will still apply if the threshold of 5 CR is crossed. The second important clarification under e-invoicing is, now this is basically an instruction which is being issued to the officers, GST department. Now, see, the reason this e-invoicing was brought in was to provide a transparency between the department and the taxpayer. But even after doing so, even after these gradually decreasing the limit, which started with 500 CR, which now currently is 5 CR, they had noticed, the government had noticed that the number of taxpayers who are being compliant with these provisions are quite less than what they have expected. So, therefore, this instruction was issued to the governmental officers to ensure that the taxpayers are being compliant with this provision of issuing e-invoice in a timely manner. So, this has basically clarified in these three situations what are the actions to be taken by the authorities. So the first situation is where the taxpayer has exceeded the threshold of 5 CR but are exempted from payment of tax. So this notification which has brought in the e-invoicing provisions, applicability of e-invoicing, these exempt certain class of persons from the requirement of issuance of e-invoice. Some of them include SEZ units, insurers, banks, NBFCs, these one more is this cinema industry. So these class of persons are exempted from issuance of e-invoice. But the department is currently not aware that this exemption is the reason that the people are not reporting e-invoice. Therefore, it has come up with an advisory where on the portal they have issued a function, issued a mechanism of reporting that if you have crossed your threshold, but only because of these exemptions you are not required to issue invoice, you have to specifically make a declaration in that on the portal that we are being exempted under this category and therefore we are not issuing e-invoice. The second situation is where the taxpayers have exceeded the prescribed threshold and they are not exempt from the requirement of e-invoice. They are mandatorily required to issue e-invoice. In that case, the government officers are now being advised to guide the taxpayers to comply with the provisions of e-invoicing in a timely manner, and they are also required to inform the taxpayer of the consequences of non-compliance. But even after such notices are received by the taxpayer, even after that they remain non-compliant, then the third phase comes in, which is continuous non-compliance of the provisions. In that case, the GST officers are advised to take a penal actions for specifically for those taxpayers whose turnover is exceeding 50 CR. So this is the whole concept.
Yeah, sorry, I think we've just overstepped the time. Should we just continue for MSME or as everyone suggests?
Yeah, we are all okay with
How long will it take on the MSME?
About 10 minutes?
Yeah, then let's complete. 10 minutes is
So are we done with the GST? Anything else we need?
Yes, sir, there are a couple of provisions and one provision which sorry.
One question was raised by a customer of mine.
Sure.
Where we had a GST department investigation at his place.
Okay.
GST officer told him that as per the provision of
Okay.
the e-way bill, not the e-invoice.
Right.
Generated by the person causing the movement of.
That's correct.
So that means the buyer. Is that right?
Causing the no. So one is the supplier and the other is the transporter. So causing the movement of the goods is so you are interpreting it to mean the recipient of the goods. Correct. No, but I think there is a clarification on this. There are two parts to an e-way bill. Part A is supposed to be filled by the person who's actually supplying the goods. If you are the supplier of the goods, and part B needs to be filled by the transporter of the goods. Okay, so to the best of my understanding right now, the interpretation is that the person causing the movement of the goods includes the supplier and not the other way around. But sir, I would caveat this by saying that let me confirm this once. But if there is any circular or any specific clarification on this, we have not specifically come across this, sir.
My audit was completed recently, but they did not raise this question.
Yeah.
That's like, whoever issues. So there are three parties, buyer,
Right.
seller and the transporter.
Correct.
Now the core purpose of e-way bill is to
Track the movement of the goods and see if
So any one of them has issued an e-way bill. How does it make difference in terms of revenue to the government or lapse in the...
Sir, it's an administrative process. It's not a revenue generating process. And let me explain it this way, that a lapse in the administration may ultimately lead to the loss to the government exchequer. It's like this, कि अगर आपका movement of goods is not tracked appropriately, you have the leeway of issuing invoices without actual movement of goods, where there has been no supply of goods. सामने वाला आप supplier हो, okay? You are issuing an invoice for supply of goods which have actually not happened. Okay, and the person who is showing the receipt of the goods is, for example, taking credit on that basis. But where is the movement of goods? So there are 2-3 angles that work over here, sir. One is that there has been no actual movement of goods. To that extent, the consumption has been showed to a lower level, whereas the invoicing has been showed to a higher level. the opposite person without receipt of goods is claiming credit for a fake supply. So, you know, all these critical issues. Now, the problem is, why is this happening? Because there is a lag in administration. So, e-way bill is a mechanism which puts that administration right in place for the government to have visibility on all transactions, specifically to movement of goods. It's that way.
If we cite an example, we are selling to someone X warehouse basis.
Right.
Where the delivery is being taken by the buyer.
Right.
Then who is to issue e-way bill in this case? Because I am not causing movement of money.
So in that case, who's the supplier? The supplier is?
We are the supplier.
Okay.
We are the supplier.
We are selling at X warehouse.
So buyer is coming.
X warehouse. Okay. Yeah.
And he is collecting the money.
So supplier is generally defined under GST, supplier of goods, as from where, you know, he has obtained registration, where he generally carries out his business. In the worst situation, you know, his residential place, if any of the threes are not being able to determine. So even if you're doing it X warehouse, it's the place from where, you know, you've obtained GST registration. So warehouse ke liye bhi, I'm under the assumption that you may have obtained a specific GST registration, or it's the warehouse of a particular third party, and from there you're causing movement of goods. It's generally that situation, right? So,
The question is,
huh,
he is a seller, I am a buyer. Right?
correct.
I raised a purchase order that I will buy from his warehouse.
Okay.
And he has given me a sales quotation that he will sell from AX warehouse.
Okay.
So I am the person who is lifting the material.
Okay. Okay.
So responsibility of generating e-way bill is mine or his?
He's the supplier and the transporter.
So, I mean, okay, now destination of supply is the question in that case. So, during e-way bill, what we write is dispatch from place X and goes to place Y.
Load and dispatch.
Now, here in this case, place X and place Y remain same.
Place X and place Y remain the same. Why?
When I
Okay.
sell him,
Okay.
I am selling material at my warehouse, X my place,
Right.
and I am handing over him delivery.
Okay.
He takes material from my warehouse.
Okay.
But this practically, for me, I don't know where he will take the material.
Okay.
So how do I raise an e-way bill?
No, sir. So there is a specific FAQ on this. Okay. There is a frequently asked question. Okay. So in this case, what you are deeming to be a transaction is that you have handed over him the goods, and that is the movement. For a e-way bill to be generated, there has to be movement of goods. Without movement of goods, e-way bill cannot be generated. So the transaction that you are talking as such, it's a hypothetical situation, sir. उसके लिए आप नहीं बोल सकते हो कि e-way bill लगेगा, because there is no movement of goods. Where is the movement of goods? You are contractually handing him over the documents, if I may say that. Correct? He is just taking the delivery of the goods. So right.
From your place only, I am picking up the material.
Okay. Okay.
So you are raising an e-invoice on me. You are raising an e-way bill to my destination.
That's correct.
From wherever I am buying.
Correct.
And then I am selling it to an X party from your destination party.
Understood.
The other state or wherever the material is going.
Correct.
I am also raising an e-invoice.
Correct.
I am making an e-way bill from your place only to my client's place.
Correct.
And you are making an e-way bill
From my place to correct.
But is it allowed that way?
So you're saying, but the actual movement of goods is happening only directly from my factory to the client's factory, to your client's factory. In that case, the movement of goods typically is happening only from my factory to your client's factory, but the documentation works this way. Sir, I'll have to practically just check the provision. Definitely. Sure, sure. Yeah.
My address, everything is
Understood, sir. Fair point.
You are normally you are placing the invoice on me and
Correct.
you are taking the e-way bill on me.
Correct.
To my wherever is my address.
Correct. Understood.
Taking the material there, I am selling it.
As per the provision of the law, I need to raise an invoice. The supplier needs to raise it on the recipient along with the transporter. But in this case, the movement is directly happening from my warehouse to your customer's warehouse. That is the. I know. I understand that, sir. So I'll have to just see that transaction once from the perspective of the law. 100%. सर मैं इसके साथ कंटिन्यू करूँ, बाद में क्वेश्चंस लूँ, वरना ये रह जाएगा. या ठीक है. So this is just very short. Or should we stop?
No, please come.
Okay. Yeah, after this, there is just one important aspect on customs bonded warehouse, which may be interesting, which may not take more than 5. I'll wind this up because इसमें एक ही point है. ये मैं 2 मिनट में करता हूँ, and that Stella madam can just take this. So this is specifically for MSMEs, and I think everyone over here must be aware regarding this. So under the MSME Act, okay, and this is applicable only to micro and small enterprises, okay, not to medium enterprises. When payments are due to all the MSME, your customer has to make the payment to you within 45 days of the receipt of goods or services. Very important. This is under the MSME ED Act 2006. जब से वो आया है 45 डेज में पेमेंट आना चाहिए MSME को. अगर ये पेमेंट नहीं आता है तो आपका जो कस्टमर है वो अपने बैलेंस शीट में भी रिपोर्ट करता है दैट यू नो दिस इज द आउटस्टैंडिंग लायबिलिटी विच आई हैव नॉट पेड टू एन MSME ओवर 45 days. This is separate. But the point is that even after having this provision under the MSME Act, this was not getting effectively implemented. People were under their leeway, they were not paying within 45 days, and the MSMEs continue to suffer. In fact, last year only a good gentleman from the Rcme had come to us saying that MSME के problem है, and what do I do? He's not making the payment to me within 45 days. You file a complaint, सब file किया, nothing happened. So our finance minister in the last budget, taking all these grievances ultimately, she said that let us put in a mechanism where this 45 days is actually followed by the customers of MSME. So what do we do for that? They linked it to income tax. What did the government say? They said, okay, fine, you guys are not taking this seriously. अभी एक काम करो, आपको जितने भी individuals, आपको जितने कंपनीज जो भी है पेमेंट MSME को करने हैं ना, आप करो 45 डेज के अंदर करो. नहीं करते हो तो व्हाट विल हैपन इज दैट unless you make the payment you cannot take the deduction of that expenditure in your income tax computation. Very important and critical. But sir, there is some interpretation to this. Okay, this comes under a provision under the Income Tax Act called as 43B. 43B is a section under the Income Tax Act which allows you to take deduction of expenses while computing your income only if you have actually paid that expense. Okay. जनरली सर क्या होता है, हम ग्रेचुइटी का प्रोविजन करते हैं, बोनस का प्रोविजन करते हैं, डिपार्टमेंट से अरे बॉस ये सब प्रोविजन है, यू कांट पुट इट इन योर कंप्यूटेशन. ओके, आपने ये खर्चा किया नहीं है, खर्चा नहीं किया है तो फिर आप उसका डिडक्शन कैसे लोगे इनकम टैक्स में? That is the logic, that is the basic framework of this section 43B. So under this section, they have added a provision saying that, and I'm reading it, section 43B, notwithstanding anything contained in any other provision of this act, a deduction otherwise allowable under this act in respect of, and they've added this, any sum payable by the assessee to a micro or small, I'm highlighting this aspect, it's applicable only to micro and small, not to medium, beyond the time limit specified in section 15 of MSMED Act. मतलब वो क्या बोल रहा है कि section 15 में बोला 45 days. It is saying that notwithstanding anything contained, a deduction otherwise allowable in respect of sum payable to a MSME beyond the period. So what they are saying is कि अगर beyond the period 45 days के बाद अगर आपने उनको पेमेंट किया है तो ये allowable होगा expense, provided आपने उसको पे किया हुआ है तो. So the ultimate implication is like this in a very short way. In a particular financial year, say 23-24, if you have made the payment to a MSME even after 45 days, or your customer has made the payment to you after 45, उसको deduction मिल जाएगा. ये कब आएगा issue? Change of financial year में, क्योंकि पैसे आपके तभी अटकते हैं. ओके, एंड ऑफ द फाइनेंशियल ईयर हो रहा है, पैसा दे नहीं रहा है, रिकवरीज हो नहीं रही है. सर हमारे साथ भी सेम प्रॉब्लम है. सो द गवर्नमेंट इज सेड, तो उसमें ये इंटरप्रिटेशन ऐसे वर्क करेगा कि आपको डिडक्शन तभी अलाउ होगा जब उसको आप एक्चुअल बेसिस पे पेमेंट कर रहे हो. मतलब अज्यूमिंग दैट वी आर, दिस इज नॉट अप्रैल बट दिस इज जनवरी ऑफ 24. I am a person who has taken certain services or goods from a RCMA member who is a micro entity. 31st मार्च के बाद मैंने उसको पेमेंट किया, मैं गया, ये फाइनेंशियल ईयर के लिए मेरे को उसका डिडक्शन नहीं मिलेगा. दैट इज़ द इम्प्लीकेशन ऑफ दिस. बट इफ आई मेक द पेमेंट और नेक्स्ट ईयर में पेमेंट कर लूँगा तो वो असेसमेंट ईयर के लिए आई विल गेट द deduction of it. So this is essentially a very important one. But what we are trying to say is that the government is, they're thinking on these lines. They're taking feedback from the people and they're actually implementing these provisions. MSME Act and Income Tax Act का कुछ दूर का नाता है नहीं. But see how they have put a restriction under the Income Tax Act so that the MSME guys get the benefit of this. So this was one. And secondly, recently we came across a very interesting article under the newspaper, and this is just this week in fact. So and this is relevant for a lot of manufacturing entities because the government comes out with PLI schemes, production linked incentives, and especially for Make in India. The government is coming out with a lot of PLI schemes for things like, your EVs, your chemicals, etc., all of these things. But last 5 years, mein jitne bhi PLIs aaye hai, they've not been very successful. The government has not been able to give what they promised. They had promised a lot of, incentives based on the turnover that these manufacturing entities achieved, but unko mila nahi tha. So now the government is Narendra Modi ji has very effectively said that after the elections are over, the first thing that needs to be taken up is rejigging of the PLI laws. Make it in such a way that the manufacturer gets the benefit, and most importantly, please include all the MSME guys in this because they are actually the the pillar of the economy. These are the statements of the Prime Minister. So this is just a it's a media report update. It just says that this is the statement given keeping in view India's vision of becoming Atmanirbhar. Production-linked incentive schemes for 14 key sectors such and so have been announced generally. As per media reports, such PLI schemes might also include MSMEs apart from large entities because essentially, these schemes work how? That in the first financial year, it's a scheme of 5 years. For the first year, you achieve a target of 1,000 crores manufacturing turnover. We give you an incentive of 2% of your turnover. Second year, you achieve 2,000 crores. This is the incentive that the government will give you. This is essentially to increase more and more manufacturing in India. But the government was not able to, kind of give this out क्योंकि बहुत सारे interpretation, legal issues थे. हमने एक EV manufacturer के लिए एक issue किया था. He went under the PLI, was not able to get it because क्या होता है सर कि ये मैन्युफैक्चर करने के लिए यू नीड सर्टन रॉ मटेरियल्स एंड द गवर्नमेंट सेज कि आप इंडिया में बना रहे हो तो डोमेस्टिक वैल्यू एडिशन होना चाहिए. इफ इट इज मोर देन 50% देन ओनली वी गिव यू द बेनिफिट. लॉट ऑफ इंटरप्रिटेशन इश्यूज अराउंड इट. सो because of which the incentive doesn't come to you on time even after achieving the target that has been set to you. So but we just thought that a lot of the members are registered under MSME and we're not aware how many under manufacturing. But if you are, sir, you may want to just take a note of these things that soon MSMEs might just get covered under PLIs and benefit of this can be taken.
Traders are not at all benefited. MSME 45, what he means is the payment are within 45 days is only to a manufacturing unit or also
No, sir, all units. Micro or small enterprise, sir. So even a trader, sir. So micro or small includes a trader, service provider, manufacturer. As long as you are a micro and small, not a medium.
micro and small is below 50 crores.
That's correct.
Right? Above 50 crores it is not.
That's correct.
This is with effect from 1/4/2024.
That's correct, sir.
Not in.
It's not retrospective. From assessment year, ये क्या चल रहा है आपका 24-25? Yes.
If the grants turnover were calculated or they are kind of combined?
No, they combined.
All grants?
Yes. So this is from the perspective of income tax.
MSME में मीडियम वालों को फिर एडवांटेज ही क्या होगा रजिस्ट्रेशन का?
ऐसे जो दूसरे benefits है like taking of loans at lower interest rates. There are certain guarantees that collaterals you need not be given when you're obtaining loans from the banks. So there are certain list of other incentives that are available to medium enterprises also.
Medium is up to what transaction?
Sorry.
Medium turnover limit is?
Medium turnover limit is 50 crores. No, sorry, it's 100 crores. I'll just check that. I have it exactly. इधर लिखा हुआ है क्या? Do you have the chart on that? I'll just check that. Sorry.
The transaction is between, say, a medium or a large and micro or small.
Okay.
If the micro or small doesn't pay the medium or the large in 45 days, then what?
So you're saying that one MSME doesn't pay to the other MSME.
Yeah. Small doesn't pay to medium, micro or small.
So your small doesn't pay to medium. No, medium तो cover ही नहीं हो रहा ना sir. Cover ही नहीं खत्म हो गया. It's applicable only to micro and small. सर MSME में आ गया, बट ये जो 45 डे इनकम टैक्स है उसमें सिर्फ माइक्रो और स्मॉल है. So there are certain structuring options we can discuss separately. Done. And sir, I think we have one last thing. I think that may be relevant it's from a custom bonded warehouse perspective. There are certain angles to it. We can just briefly.
Just take very brief example. Already we are there.
Just one slide. So this is for the members who are into importing goods in a custom bonded warehouse or in an FTWZ. So in terms of that, because typically importers, if they are doing that, they do a trade-off between whether I import in a custom bonded warehouse or I import in an FTWZ, which is just a warehouse, which is an SEZ. So initially, the main disadvantage of importing in a custom bonded warehouse is that there is an interest of 15%. If you store your goods in a custom bonded warehouse for more than 90 days, you have to bear an interest of 15%, which is a significant cost. So generally, people, tend to prefer FTWZ recently because the interest component is a significant cost. But in an FTWZ, till recently, there was an interpretational issue on what is the value on which the custom duty is liable to be paid. And especially on the first issue, in relation to transport, loading, unloading and handling charges associated with delivery of goods to the warehouse. So we are talking about, one is that the goods are imported from outside India to the customs station. And the second is from the customs station to the FTWZ, there is a second leg of transportation. So that second leg and the transportation cost and loading, unloading, etc., the question was whether that value is also supposed to be added while calculating customs duty on that goods. So till very recently, there was ambiguity on that issue. And in fact, ELP was instrumental in getting this advanced ruling on this issue, where it has been clarified that that value on the second leg of transportation is not required to be added, even in relation to FTWZ. So therefore, for the purpose of valuation, a house and an FTWZ seem to be at par. There is no great difference between both. And therefore, you're back to the position where I would look at a custom bonded warehouse as, raising an additional cost of 15% interest for me. And I would possibly prefer an FTWZ. So that was the update. Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone.
Important question which I'm sure everybody would be concerned about.
Sure.
What if we store a material in a warehouse?
Okay.
And it gets stolen. We have imported the material and kept it in the warehouse.
Okay.
And it gets stolen. We have paid IGST at the time of import or the
Correct.
GST on purchase.
Correct.
Now the material cannot be sold.
Correct.
So what happens to the IGST or GST which you have paid? Can we claim input credit on that or not?
So are you talking about custom bonded warehouse? Normal private warehouse, which... Okay. So because the situation would be different, because then...
Because ideally, you can take sir, you will have to prove it then, that you are in receipt
No,
of the goods.
so yeah, because there is a... Yeah, so like... So 17.5, there is a restriction of goods which are lost. For that, you can't take credit. So if suppose... Yeah, there's a restriction.
और E-invoice का कहीं पे डिपार्टमेंट मैच करता है numbers, figures?
E-way bill or E-invoice का जी sir. That's one of the purposes of kind of interlinking everything.
Even FASTag is being copied by state. FASTag is also linked. No, FASTag is even if there is no allowance, there is a movement on a vehicle, the FASTag is the utility of a number item.
Okay, thank you everyone. Thank you. Thanks.
One question here.
Sure.
Is the warehouse address to be mentioned compulsory in your registration certificate? Yes or no?
Yes,
Okay.
it will be treated as an additional place of business.
Okay. And if it is not there,
It's an administrative.
Yeah, so we have faced that issue for one of our clients. So thankfully, there is no specific penalty for that. But there is a general penalty of 25,000 which the department may impose. Yeah, that's the only consequence.
Because we have a couple of warehouses which keeps on changing, so then
Yeah.
I cannot register all the warehouses.
Ideally, you should as an additional place of business, but in case you haven't, then there is no special penalty for that. The only penalty is that general penalty of 25,000.
Because there is a problem how to register the warehouse, and that is not getting possible because they want a registered agreement. For the registered agreement, you have to do it with the owner.
Owner, yeah.
Here in Mumbai and other places, you have warehouse keepers.
Yeah.
Who have a agreement with
Practical
the
issues, yeah.
site they have rented from,
Yeah.
which does not tally. So I'm
Yes.
not able to register my
Yes. So yeah, there are practical issues on that. So it depends. Like certain cases, you will be able to get away with just getting an NOC from the landlord and then upload that as a document for the purpose of additional place of business. But there are practical issues on that. Yeah. No, you'll have to get a proper document, or you have to get an NOC. So for some, we can just touch base offline. For some clients in Pune, we have kind of helped in getting this registration by getting some sort of a NOC from the landlord, which was understood to be accepted. So we can touch base.
Thank you. Thank you. Moment was going by. Nitin bhai. Mahavir ji. Come. Mr. Yash ji, Stella Joseph ji, and team.
फोटो खींचो कौन खींच रहा है फोटो यश भाई
Thank you. I have been given the pleasant duty to propose vote of thanks. I am Pratiksha, committee member of Rcme, and behalf of Rcme committee, I would like to thank Mr. Yash Desai, Stella Joseph, Anusri Kothari, Hema Modi from ELP for sparing the valuable time and enlightening us about major updates on MSME and key updates on GST for traders. Also, I would like to thank Mr. Dipen for providing us the online live YouTube service. We are going live for first time and our members can view the program from anywhere in the world. Future, I would like to hotel all for providing us venue and good food. Now I request everyone to join for dinner. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for Prakash bhai.
Special thanks to Prakash bhai for organizing the program.
Super speech. Thank you.